Chapter 1. The Beautiful Woman. Since her husband became a fool, Junlin's doorstep has never known peace. Junlin is a striking beauty. Her marriage to Gao Wang village once stirred considerable excitement, causing the men of the village to lose their rest over her. In her youth, she wore her long, lustrous hair cascading down her back, her large, double-lidded eyes sparkling with warmth, and her smile as gentle as a crescent moon. Though her bosom was not particularly ample, her shapely posterior conformed to the rural ideal, signifying her potential to bear sons. Indeed, Junlin bore a son, a plump and fair child. While other women often found their figures altered post-childbirth, Junlin defied this norm. After giving birth, her curves only became more pronounced, her silhouette now a captivating blend of allure and maturity, drawing admiring glances as she walked. Now, with her husband reduced to a state of foolishness, the men of the village began to entertain new thoughts. Initially, they hesitated to approach her, fearing retribution from her hulking spouse. However, they soon recognized that her husband was merely a figurehead, oblivious even to the taunts of the village children. Bold Wang Wu was the first to venture forth. He harbored a secret affection for Junlin, having spurned several marriage proposals arranged by his family, because none measured up to her. With her husband incapacitated, he saw an opportunity. Wang Wu, wary of gossip, chose the cover of night to visit. Upon entering, he stumbled upon Junlin nursing her child, the sight of her bare skin rendering him momentarily speechless. Startled, Junlin quickly covered herself, while Wang Wu, flustered and at a loss for words, blurted out, "Sister-in-law, I've come to help with the chores." Utilizing his brute strength, he busied himself moving jars and grain, gradually easing Junlin's apprehensions. As he gathered her clothes, inhaling their scent, he proposed, "Sister-in-law, it must be inconvenient for you to care for the child. Allow me to take these home and wash them." This suggestion unsettled Junlin, leading her to perceive him as a creep, and she brandished a pole to chase him from her yard. That night, Wang Wu's heart shattered. The second visitor was Wang Xianzhong, but his intentions were not driven by lust. He was a close friend of her foolish husband, come to deliver baby formula and inquire if Junlin faced any difficulties. Yet, Junlin found herself captivated by Xianzhong. Having served in the military, his tall, imposing frame exuded an aura of security. Now a transportation driver, he enjoyed a respectable position. However, Xianzhong was married to a kind-hearted and beautiful woman, and he could never abandon his beloved for someone like Junlin. Though Junlin was beautiful, she adhered to her principles. She exchanged pleasantries with Xianzhong, allowing him to hold her and the swaddled little Gao Yuan. Even so, her heart felt fulfilled. She yearned for a capable man to stand by her side, to alleviate her profound loneliness and anxiety, as the gazes of the village men often pierced her with discomfort. After Xianzhong departed, Junlin felt as though her heart had been hollowed out. Looking at her husband, peacefully sleeping, she was left to weep, lamenting the cruel hand of fate. Later, countless men continued to cross this threshold, with many seeking to take advantage while few were genuinely sincere. Especially when Junlin found herself in deeper conversations with a suitor, on the verge of intimacy, she would pose the question, "Will you marry me?" In those moments, the men, fueled by passion, would often spout nonsensical promises. Junlin would then push for further commitment, insisting, "If you marry me, you must also accept my child and my foolish husband, otherwise it's a no-go." Upon hearing this, 8 out of 10 would wilt. Some, lacking integrity, would feign compliance only to hastily loosen their belts. Junlin would seize the opportunity to produce paper, a pen, and an ink pad, placing them on the table, declaring, "Press your thumbprint before we proceed. Should you dare to backtrack, I shall take legal action against you." In this manner, every single one would wither away. It was one thing to take on a child, but to care for a simple-minded husband as well. What kind of family would that make? Junlin was a woman of deep affection and loyalty, fully aware of how much her husband had once adored and cherished her. Her husband had been struck senseless by criminals while bravely defending the right. This was precisely why she could not let go of him. He was a robust man who should not be forsaken. Thus, Junlin continually yearned for a kind-hearted, responsible man to care for her child and husband. If such a man truly existed in this world, she would gladly marry him. Yet, 8 long years passed, her child was now in elementary school, and still, she had not encountered that man. As she watched the days slip by and her life deteriorate, Junlon felt her spirit nearly worn away. Equally burdensome were the whispers of the village. A widow attracts much gossip, though she was not a widow. Her circumstances rendered her akin to one. Each time she ventured into the fields, she had to endure the covert mockery from women and the lewd gazes of men. Equally tragic was her beloved son, Gao Yuan. The child faced discrimination in class, often being ridiculed as a little fool, sometimes even returning home battered and bruised, weeping as he recounted his woes. When she approached others to seek justice for her son, she was labeled a wanton woman, and the man would inappropriately touch her, leaving her feeling so ashamed that thoughts of ending her life crossed her mind. The more understanding her son became, the more it pained her heart. Eventually, when little Gao Yuan was bullied, he would hide outside, too frightened to return home. He would wait until his clothes were clean, his face unblemished, and his wounds had stopped bleeding before sneaking back in at night, shutting the door to avoid seeing her. In these moments, her gaze would turn furiously towards her simple-minded husband. Will you act like a man? Look at how we, mother and child, have been mistreated. I have truly had enough of this life. I long to abandon you and this household. Though she voiced her frustrations and harbored resentment, she ultimately lacked the heart to follow through. The catalyst for her eventual change came one autumn when she and her son were weeding in the fields. That day, the sun blazed fiercely, and the fields were nearly devoid of laborers. Her son, fatigued by the heat, had wandered off to the nearby sorghum field for a nap. Exhausted from her toil, she intended to step to the edge of the field for a sip of cool water, yet, before she could lift the cup, a pair of strong hands suddenly grasped her from behind, forcefully pinning her to the ground and tearing at her clothes. Chapter 2. The transformation of Junlon. The man lurking behind Junlon was engulfed by a fervent, green-eyed intensity. He had been patiently awaiting the opportune moment for years. Yet when that moment finally manifested, he found himself paralyzed by fear. Today, however, he could no longer afford to waver, for Junlon was simply too enchanting. Each time he concealed himself in the shadows, listening to the sound of her refreshing herself in the field, the gentle trickle of water stirred his very essence, igniting a tempest of fantasies within his mind. Behold her smooth, fair back and delicate waist. How could such beauty possibly belong to a coarse rural woman? Her figure transcended even his most extravagant imaginings, yet she chose to remain beside a foolish husband, a truly tragic waste. With a coarse stubble grazing Junlon's back, he found it nearly impossible to resist the primal urge to bite down. Junlon, overwhelmed with terror, felt her body succumb to numbness. She longed to turn and unveil the identity of her assailant, yet that formidable hand pressed her into the grass, rendering her immobile. All she could do was scream, her voice a desperate plea for assistance. Scream as you might, on this sweltering day, who could possibly hear you, even if you shouted until your throat was raw? No one would come to your rescue. No one foresaw that the commotion would awaken the slumbering child in the distance. He dashed over, calling out, "Mom, what's wrong?" The man behind her jolted in astonishment. He had never anticipated that a child would be present in this secluded location. "Xiao Yuan, flee, run away. Do not approach," Ma Junlon cried, tears cascading down her cheeks as she implored her son. The man was already sprinting towards the boy. She recognized the figure. It was the village's infamous bachelor, Heir Tuozi. Unlike the other men in the village, who would jest and tease yet maintain a semblance of propriety, Heir Tuozi stood apart. He had committed thievery, served time in prison, and was far from being a respectable man. Fortunately, her son was astute. He swiftly turned and darted into the sorghum field. Junlon hastily adjusted her trousers and fervently pursued him. Her child was her heart and soul, her sole hope, if anything were to befall him. How could she possibly endure such a fate? In her desperation, she could not restrain herself from shouting, "Do not pursue my child. If you desire something, come for me instead. I shall not call for help. I will fulfill your wishes, just spare my child." Upon hearing this, Heir Tuozi was indeed tempted. Yet he was not devoid of wisdom. Should that insufferable brat escape and summon aid, he would undoubtedly be apprehended. Having recently emerged from the confines of prison, he harbored no desire to return to such a dismal existence. Therefore, he resolved to seize the boy first employing threats and intimidation, while manipulating the child's well-being to compel Junlan in a secretive rendezvous with him each night. The more he pondered, the more exhilarated he became. However, he soon stumbled over a sorghum stalk, landing abruptly on his face. Upon regaining his balance, he discovered no trace of a child. Ertuoshi, consumed by fury, scoured the sorghum field, while Ma Junlan wept, desperately tearing at the sorghum leaves. "My child, I implore you to be safe. If anything were to befall you, I cannot bear it." It appeared that the child was irretrievably lost, yet only a short distance away, ere Tuozi fortified his resolve, contemplating whether it would be prudent to exploit Junlan first before retreating to a hidden sanctuary. Ultimately, Junlan proved to be irresistibly alluring. Such an alluring opportunity was far too precious to allow to escape. As he readied himself to return and seek out Junlan, he was abruptly startled by a thunderous roar nearby. Wang Xinzong's voice. "Tuzi, you despicable rogue. Brace yourself for the moment I skin you alive and hang you from a tree for a thorough thrashing." This menacing threat sent a chill coursing through Tuzi's veins. He harbored no fear of others, yet he found himself particularly daunted by Xinzong, a former soldier. One blow from that colossal fist could easily send his teeth flying. Paralyzed by terror, he stood motionless, while Junlan, alerted by the commotion, called out to Xinzong. Bursting forth from the sorghum field, tears brimmed in Junlin's eyes upon witnessing her child cradled in Xinzong's arms. "Where is Tuzi?" Xinzong inquired, his iron fist tightly clenched, the veins on his forehead pulsating. "He has pursued Xiao Yuan and has yet to return," Junlan responded, gently drawing Gao Yuan into her embrace. "I shall go to the village committee to summon the militia. Even if I must dig 3 feet into the earth, I will unearth that scoundrel," Xinzong vowed through gritted teeth. "Brother Xinzong, please, let us allow this matter to pass," Junlan implored, tears glistening in her eyes. Yet, Xinzong hesitated, his furious gaze gradually transforming into one of complexity. Did he not understand the fears that lay beneath Junlan's plea? In the secluded villages of the 1990s, vestiges of feudal toxicity persisted. The populace exhibited little sympathy for women enduring indignities. Rather, they labeled them as tainted, a source of shame for their families. Reputation held paramount significance in rural society. Once tarnished, a life could be considered irreparably ruined. Furthermore, with Junlin's exquisite beauty and her husband's folly, the villagers undoubtedly reveled in whispered gossip about her throughout the years. How could Xinzong, a man who roamed the land for transport, remain oblivious to such realities? A dignified man, towering at 7 feet, confronted by the sorrows of his time, could only concede and declare, "I shall discreetly caution Tuzi." This was overheard by Tuzi, who discerned that Junlan was apprehensive about exacerbating the situation. Had he been aware of her frailty, he would have taken action sooner. Xinzong, who often departed for extended periods, would soon discover that each time he left the village, it became an opportunity for Tuzi. Once again, Tuzi receded into the shadows, while Gao Yuan succumbed to a state of trepidation. Each day, he experienced dizziness and disorientation. Heartbroken, Junlan took her son to the clinic. Yet the physician was unable to ascertain the cause of his affliction, and the prescribed medication yielded no results. As Gao Yuan's condition continued to deteriorate, a frantic Junlan turned to local sorcerers for assistance, engaging in rituals that involved burning incense and paper, reciting incantations to dispel malevolent forces, and administering 2 pounds of incense ash to Gao Yuan 3 times daily, mixed with hot water. However, rather than improving, her son's appetite waned, and he could scarcely consume anything after ingesting the ash. Desperation clouded her eyes with tears, and at times, she felt an overwhelming inclination to confront her ineffectual husband. "How can you be so helpless? You possess a robust physique, yet display such timidity. Why must I endure this relentless misfortune? Why must I tend to you each and every day? I have reached the limits of my endurance." Junlan had truly arrived at her breaking point. The unwavering boundaries she had upheld over the years crumbled beneath the unyielding pressures of existence with a resounding shatter. I shall no longer concern myself with this fool. I have resolved to turn my back upon him. If I cannot even care for my own son, why must I endure the daily humiliation? What is there for me to gain? Were there but a man who could embrace both my son and me, I would wed him, depart, and finally live for myself. At last, Ertsu had his opportunity. He discreetly inquired and discovered that Xianzhong had embarked on a business trip today. Chapter 3. Ertsu's Retribution in the Stillness of Night. Ertsu scaled the courtyard wall and stealthily entered Junlan's abode. How tranquil it is. It appears that everyone is in a deep slumber. My dear little beauty, you must be longing for a companion. Soon, I shall indulge you and allow you to savor the exquisite delights of womanhood. Beneath the ethereal moonlight, Ertsu stealthily entered the inner chamber and beheld the magnificent scarlet bed, adorned with an alluring floral quilt. Unable to suppress his anticipation, he swiftly shed his garments and nestled into the comforting embrace of the bedclothes. Ah, how delightful! Where are you, my little beauty? He eagerly sought with his hands, only to encounter a robust man instead. Where was Junlan? To his dismay, he was confronted by her foolish spouse, who emitted a loud and odious sound right before him. Choking and coughing, Ertsu searched the bed in vain, finding no sign of a woman. In his haste, he ventured into the adjoining room, only to realize that even the child had vanished. Earlier that day, Junlan had taken all the family's money and brought Gao Yuan to the county hospital. Fortunately, thanks to the physician's remarkable expertise, her son's condition began to improve after an afternoon of intravenous treatment. Next to the neighboring hospital bed lay a large bunch of bananas, which her son could not help but eye repeatedly. Junlan, aware of their circumstances, deliberately shielded her son's gaze with her hand. Such extravagant foreign fruit was beyond their means. Thankfully, her son understood, silently observing, perhaps out of curiosity, as he had only encountered bananas within the pages of books. As evening fell, the owner of the bananas arrived, a strikingly handsome man. He was not overly stout, yet possessed a solid build and exuded a certain cultured demeanor. He greeted everyone with a gentle smile, displaying remarkable politeness. Junlan had never met such a man. She felt too humble to engage him in conversation. However, he was exceedingly generous, offering bananas and sharing his fruits with little Gao Yuan, insisting on giving rather than receiving. This man was quite entertaining, performing tricks and sharing jokes to amuse her son. At times, Junlan found herself stifling laughter, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. He even convinced Gao Yuan that he practiced martial arts. The boy, believing his words, was met with Junlan's skepticism, as his refined appearance hardly suggested a martial artist. Through their exchanges, they grew increasingly familiar. Junlan discovered that his name was Huang Guowei, a 38-year-old not from the area, but in town for business due to a minor ailment. His wife had passed away years prior, leaving behind a daughter who resided with her grandmother. She often noticed many distinguished individuals visiting Brother Huang, bringing gifts, including police officers. Huang Guowei explained that these were all his middle school classmates. An observantman, Huang Guowei frequently shared tales of his adventures, stating, having traversed the south and ventured north, I have even sipped water from Great Britain. He often regaled Gao Yuan and Junlan with stories of the world beyond, narratives of towering skyscrapers, bustling streets, and a myriad of dialects. In the eyes of the young plateau, she perceived her mother's condition improving remarkably, even to the extent of indulging in adornments. She purchased snowflake cream and colorful hair ties, her face fragrant and her laughter illuminating her large, twinkling eyes, revealing a row of perfectly white teeth, strikingly beautiful. In her memories, her mother rarely exhibited such joy and beauty, and her demeanor had become decidedly more cheerful. Occasionally, amidst her drowsy slumber, she could hear her mother conversing with Uncle Huang, their laughter softly echoing through the night. The innocent plateau also cherished her conversations with Uncle Huang. He spoke of his father, whose foolishness was matched only by his love for him and his mother. He recounted how, during torrential rains, it was always his foolish father who brought him an umbrella, ensuring that his mother remained dry. He also mentioned a classmate, Wang Dajiang, who often bullied him, calling him a little fool, despite the fact that he was the top of his class. Huang Guowei encouraged the plateau, advising him to disregard the nonsensical taunts of his peers. With spirited enthusiasm, he proclaimed, "Little one, you must study diligently. The future belongs to the educated." On the day of their release from the hospital, Brother Huang graciously extended an invitation to transport them home on his motorcycle. The young plateau was imbued with an unusual sense of exhilaration, for this motorcycle appeared even more formidable than that of Wang Dajiang. If only Wang Dajiang could behold it. Would he dare to mock him once more? However, Junlan, desiring to evade idle chatter, insisted upon taking a less frequented route into the village. Thus, the youthful plateau's modest hopes were gently extinguished. Meanwhile, Heir Tuozi from the village had grown increasingly impatient, convinced that Junlan had forsaken her foolish husband and departed with the child. Standing upon a dirt embankment, he was poised to pilfer watermelons from old Lu's field when, by mere chance, he observed smoke spiraling from Junlan's chimney. That foolish husband lacked culinary skills, and Junlan's in-laws had long severed ties with her family. The only plausible explanation now was that Junlan had indeed returned. His heart began to race, and his blood surged. Nevertheless, he understood the necessity of restraint. The moment was not yet opportune. This evening, he would ensure that his scheme would reach fruition. At home, Huang Guowei relished Junlan's culinary talents while assisting the young plateau with her studies. Several times, Junlan hesitated to voice her thoughts, her mind ensnared in confusion. Could someone of such esteemed stature genuinely embrace their humble abode? After the evening meal, Huang Guowei prepared to take his leave, considering it inappropriate for a man and woman to remain alone, particularly with a foolish husband present. However, Junlan insisted on his company. Eager to hear tales of the world beyond, well acquainted with the intricacies of life, Huang Guowei could readily perceive Junlan's intentions. She was indeed commendable, industrious, virtuous, and strikingly beautiful. Should they dare to breach that fragile boundary, he would not object in the slightest. As the lengthy night progressed, Junlan, with considerable effort, finally lulled her husband and son into slumber. She then proceeded to the main room to engage in conversation with Brother Huang. Bathed in the warm orange glow of the lamp, Junlan appeared anxious, her cheeks aglow as she struggled to articulate her thoughts. Huang Guowei, entranced by her bashful beauty, found himself momentarily at a loss, his body taut with anticipation. It is growing rather late. Perhaps I should. Just as Huang Guowei rose to depart, the door to the room swung open, revealing none other than Heir Tuozi. Both Junlan and Heir Tuozi were taken aback. He had never anticipated encountering a man within the confines of the house. Junlan swiftly grasped the rolling pin and exclaimed, He is a nefarious individual. Brother Huang, he is a thief and has previously tormented me. Et Tuozi iniziali contemplated fleeing. Yet who could have foreseen that Huang Guowei possessed such formidable martial prowess? In a fluid motion, he lunged forward, seized Heir Tuozi by the head, and forcefully brought him to the ground. He then twisted his arm back, compelling his submission on the spot. Junlan, procure some rope to restrain him. Huang Guowei commanded with unwavering authority. Brother Huang, perhaps it would be prudent to let this matter slide. I am familiar with rural affairs. Allow me to handle it. Huang Guowei spoke with a composed demeanor, subtly indicating with his gaze. Ultimately, Heir Tuozi found himself utterly constrained, his mouth filled with the repugnant sock of a foolish husband, prompting him to roll his eyes in despair. It suddenly occurred to Heir Tuozi that he had gravely misjudged the circumstances. Junlan had not returned home in recent days because she had sought assistance. Nevertheless, he remained unfazed, contemplating that if he were to report the incident to the authorities, he could merely assert he was a visitor, claiming he had neither stolen nor robbed anything, and pondered how the police might address the situation. Huang Guowei wasted no time, employing his brick-like mobile phone to reach out to a classmate in the county, succinctly elucidating the predicament. Junlan also engaged in a brief discussion with Brother Huang before donning the garments that Heir Tuozi had torn asunder that very day. Before long, within a mere half hour, law enforcement from both the county and the town arrived. Guowei, Was this truly an attempted burglary with violence? Inquired a county officer. Just behold my sister's attire. Furthermore, my brother-in-law is a simpleton. What else could he possibly be doing at her residence in the dead of night? Huang Guowei retorted through gritted teeth. The town's officers were even more taken aback. Oh, is this not Heir Tuozi? Just released recently. And he has already failed to restrain himself. Once more? Heir Tuozi whimpered incoherently. And, as the police removed the repugnant sock, he finally managed to protest. I am innocent. I merely came to visit. I did nothing wrong and was assaulted. At the stroke of 1 in the morning, visiting the wife of a fool, Heir Tuozi. You have practically confessed yourself, the town officer exclaimed, exasperated, pointing an accusatory finger at him. Over the years, I have apprehended you thrice. I never imagined you would grow bolder with each incident. Zhao Tao, is this still a habitual offender? The county officer inquired. Indeed, Captain Song, he was recently released, came to reply. Well then, the evidence is irrefutable. With a history of offenses, you must ensure a stringent charge. And as for that sister, change out of those clothes. We shall take them back to the county for fingerprint analysis. As long as there are traces of this individual, I will guarantee he serves a lengthy sentence. Junlun swiftly retreated to her chamber, changed her attire, and surrendered the tattered garments to the authorities. Guowei, might you and your sister aid us in furnishing a statement? Captain Song proposed. My sister has children to tend to. I shall go, he replied. I too am a witness to these occurrences. With that, Huang Guowei confidently made his way towards the exit. In that fleeting moment, Junlun experienced a deep tumult within her heart. Throughout the years, Brother Huang had indeed been the one she had long awaited, even exceeding her aspirations. Thus, she hurried outside and exchanged a few hushed words with Huang Guowei before reluctantly allowing him to depart. When Gao Yuan awoke the following day, he was astounded to discover that the gentle mother he once cherished had returned to him. Junlun no longer hurled harsh words at her husband. Instead, she diligently wielded scissors to bestow upon her simple-minded spouse a haircut, washed his hair, dressed him in clean garments, and prepared a warm breakfast. She took her son to the market, indulging in cold drinks at 20 cents a cup and feasting on fried dough sticks until satisfied. She procured 3 vibrant garments in one go and even splurged 10 yuan on a multifunctional stationery box for her son, Gao Yuan. The sudden emergence of happiness left Gao Yuan, who was accustomed to a life of hardship, somewhat bewildered by this newfound joy. Yet, everything transpired in the most palpable manner. Moreover, Junlun washed and dried the old wheat at home, took 3 bags of it to the mill to grind into white flour, and filled their flour jar to the brim. Under the cover of night, she prepared an entire steamer of buns, placing them carefully to steam. Unable to sleep, Gao Yuan assisted her in stoking the fire. After a long day's toil, Junlun finally freed her hands to embrace her son tightly in her arms. Beneath the vast night sky, in their barren courtyard, Ma Junlun pressed her lips together, tears brimming in her eyes. She was filled with reluctance, yet was at a loss for words to convey to her son. Let us sing once more the song that my son loves most. There are no fragrant flowers, no towering trees. I am but a blade of grass, unnoticed by all. Never lonely, never troubled. Look, my companions stretch across the ends of the earth. Nestled in the warmth of her embrace, listening to his mother's gentle serenade, Gao Yuan dozed off, oblivious to the tears on her face, believing that life would continue in this blissful manner. In the dead of night, Gao Yuan was startled awake by the sound of a motorcycle outside. Accompanying this was the creaking sound of the courtyard door swinging open. His initial instinct was that the esteemed Uncle Huang had arrived. After all, what other reason could there be for his mother to go and open the door? The more he pondered, the more exhilarated he became. He yearned to leap onto that magnificent motorcycle and take another exhilarating ride with Uncle Huang. Thus, he hurriedly dashed out, forgetting to don his shoes, racing barefoot into the night. However, upon reaching the courtyard, he overheard his mother engaged in conversation with Uncle Huang outside. Is everything settled at home? Uncle Huang inquired. It's all settled, Junlun replied softly, her voice thick with emotion. Good. From this moment on, if you accompany me, you shall no longer endure suffering. Can you take my child with you? No. At that moment, even if Gao Yuan were indeed a simpleton, He comprehended the weight of the situation. Without a moment's hesitation, he sprinted outside with all his might, witnessing his mother grasping a bundle as she mounted Uncle Huang's motorcycle. The boy, beneath the night sky, was engulfed by fear and helplessness. His slight frame trembled as though plunged into an icy abyss. He summoned every ounce of strength to surge forward, tightly clasping his mother's leg, tears cascading down his cheeks as he bit his lip, imploring with youthful tenacity, "Mother, please do not leave." Chapter 4. The great decision. Ge Yuan's sudden arrival took Junlan by surprise. Yet, her resolve remained steadfast. How could she easily alter her decision? She could only muster a smile, reaching out to caress her son's head, saying, "Mother must attend to some matters. I shall return shortly." But Gao Yuan persisted. "Mother, do not go. Be good and rest. I shall bring you something delightful upon my return." "Mother, please do not leave." In Gao Yuan's mouth, merely 3 words struck Junlan's heart like a razor-sharp blade. How could she bear to allow her son to endure the tribulations of the world alongside his foolish father? She turned to Brother Huang, her voice laced with desperation, imploring, "Take him with you." Yet, the response was marked by impatience. What does it mean to take him? If he were merely a year or 2 old and oblivious, it would be one matter, but he is of such an age. Take him with you. Or else, I shall not go either. For the sake of her son, Junlan staked her fate. Very well. Then, let him accompany you. This child is not without merit. At last, the other party relented. Junlan's countenance illuminated with joy as she reached for Gao Yuan, eager to pull him onto the vehicle. However, Gao Yuan obstinately resisted, prompting Junlan's exasperation. "What is it that you desire, child?" With tears cascading from his large eyes, Gao Yuan cried out, "If we depart, what shall become of Dad?" Though his father was lacking in wisdom, he held him in the deepest affection. When his mother struck him, it was his father who shielded him. When he succumbed to illness, it was his father who bore him. When sorrow enveloped him, it was his father who remained steadfast by his side, albeit with a certain foolishness. This was a paternal love that transcended mere intellect, a sentiment that Gao Yuan had always internalized. Junlan, however, felt a surge of anxiety, recognizing that there was no time for contemplation. Her sole focus was on caring for him. "Gao Yuan, accompany Uncle Huang, and you shall experience the thrill of riding a grand motorcycle each day, journeying by train to the south to behold magnificent skyscrapers and a multitude of vehicles." At that moment, Uncle Huang interjected, "Gao Yuan, all that others possess shall also be yours, and you shall no longer face discrimination or bullying. Enter the car. I shall treat you as my own son." Such an overwhelming temptation it was. Was this not the very aspiration that Gao Yuan had longed for? Poverty did not instill fear within him. Rather, it was the degradation of his dignity that haunted his thoughts. If only his father resembled Uncle Huang, he could genuinely stand tall and embrace his pride. By forsaking his foolish father, he could cast aside the label of a simpleton and sever the bonds of mockery and derision. Yet vividly, images of his father braving the tempest to provide him with an umbrella surged in his mind, accompanied by the countless moments of companionship that defined his upbringing. How cruel was reality, thrusting a naive youth to the precipice of fate, compelling him to choose between the ties of family and the allure of temptation. The once exhilarating roar of the motorcycle now reverberated like a heavy drum, striking deep within his soul. The Uncle Huang he revered appeared as a malevolent specter, poised to snatch away his most cherished kin. A glance at his mother, who was betraying their family, shattered his heart. On that seemingly unremarkable night in the countryside, that most ordinary of youths clenched his fists and resolutely made the most significant decision of his life. He forcefully pushed his mother away, retreating 3 steps while stifling the tears that welled in his eyes, and proclaimed with unwavering resolve, "Mother, go without concern. I shall remain and care for father." As she gazed upon her understanding son, Junlan's heart twisted in profound sorrow. Yet, life could not persist in its current state. Ge Yuan's grave illness, compounded by recent extravagances, had depleted the family's resources. Furthermore, with the departure of heir Tuozi, alongside Zhang Tuozi and Ma Guangguan from the village, who could assure that this beautiful woman would no longer endure indignities? She was reluctant to surrender her vibrant years to the burden of a foolish spouse. She, too, was a woman deserving of a man's affection and tenderness. Such was the tumult within her. She yearned to reach out and take her son away. Yet the motorcycle roared to life, and her son, leaning against the wall, feeling abandoned and powerless, drifted further from her. Gao Yuan chided himself for his tears, yet they surged forth uncontrollably. It seemed as though his spirit clung desperately to his mother, while the departing motorcycle stretched the chasm of his soul. His diminutive frame struggled against the formidable motorcycle, wishing to reclaim his mother's heart with sheer determination. But the night enveloped the figure ahead, shattering his spirit into fragments. "Oh, youth lament! Your cries may still resonate within her ears. Perhaps she will reconsider her decision." She lingered in her departure, her thoughts still entwined with yours. If you weep, act petulantly, or feign vulnerability, surely she would choose to remain by your side. Yet, Gao Yuan opened his mouth, yet no sound escaped his lips. He comprehended the tribulations his mother had faced throughout the years, laboring incessantly to sustain the family. He encountered prejudice, but how could his mother have evaded scorn? The tomes declare that one must repay their mother's benevolence. Now that she has discovered a more flourishing existence, how could he possess the cruelty to imprison her within this half-existence? However, he found himself unable to depart, for he was his father's progeny, bearing his lineage. He had pledged to restore the dignity that his father had relinquished, piece by piece. In that ephemeral moment, Gao Yuan sensed a profound maturation within himself, coming to the realization that he must embrace adulthood. He was compelled to bear the burdens of his family and support his imprudent father. Thus, he refrained from crying out in despair. Instead, he concealed all his sorrow deep within. A faint aroma of something charred drifted from the yard, and he abruptly recalled the buns simmering in the pot. Lifting the lid, steam enveloped his visage, and he had long since forgotten his anguish. He grasped the steaming buns one by one into a basin, yet the familiar silhouette of his mother was absent from the stove. "There are no fragrant blossoms, no towering trees. I am merely a humble blade of grass, unnoticed by all." His mother's melody seemed to linger in the atmosphere, yet tears cascaded relentlessly down his cheeks. How could such excruciating sorrow permit a youth to forget in an instant? The piercing sorrow and loss sent waves of dizziness through Gao Yuan's mind, blurring the boundary between reality and dream. Yet, he distinctly heard footsteps approaching from behind. Gao Yuan was engulfed in terror. His mother was gone, and his father's snoring still reverberated within the house. Whose footsteps could these be? Were they of human origin or spectral in nature? He dared not turn around. The steaming bun clutched tightly in his hand, oblivious to its heat. His body felt numbed and immobile, while an overwhelming dread enveloped his already shattered spirit. "Allow me to assist. I would not wish for your delicate hands to be burned," a voice called from behind. As Gao Yuan turned, he beheld his mother, standing in the yard with a bundle slung over her shoulder. In the ethereal glow of the moonlight, her eyes were swollen from weeping, the gentle breeze tousling her unkempt hair, yet her smile exuded warmth. Junlan finally dismounted from the motorcycle at the village's threshold. She relinquished her singular chance to reshape her fate. Instead, she opted to dedicate her youth to the protection of her husband and child. She recognized that her most cherished possession in this life was her son. No wealth could ever rival its worth. Gao Yuan set down the basin he had been carrying and turned to embrace his mother. This time, he could finally weep without restraint. With unbridled joy, he cried out, for indeed, life was a beautiful gift. Not everyone is destined for greatness. Yet we ordinary souls also discover meaning in our lives. And there exist, indeed, noble causes for which we shall strive with every fiber of our being. On that autumn evening, within a modest farmhouse, the brilliance of humanity illuminated the shadows, shining even more radiantly than the countless stars above. Chapter 5. Racing Against Time. As time progressed, Gao Yuan was on the verge of entering junior high. However, a troubling predicament emerged within their impoverished household. The town's middle school was situated a minimum of 10 miles away, and Gao Yuan, like his peers, required a bicycle for transportation. Yet their financial circumstances were dire. His school fees had been painstakingly gathered from his mother's scant earnings from selling grain. How could a sensible Gao Yuan impose an additional burden on his mother by requesting a bicycle? The day preceding the commencement of school, Gao Yuan quietly resolved, I shall walk. Rising an hour earlier each day should suffice to evade tardiness. Just as he solidified this plan, his mother returned home. Ma Junlan, gently cradling her son's anxious face, smiled affectionately and said, I have spoken with Dejiang's mother. From now on, Dejiang will accompany you to school. Over the past 2 years, Wang Xianzhong had been quite considerate towards the Gao Yuan family. To avert any recurrence of the second Baldi incident, he encouraged his wife to visit the Gao Yuan household frequently, and they gradually developed a close friendship. With Wang Xianzhong's influence, the village's bachelors grew cautious of Ma Junlan, and no further misconduct ensued. But would Wang Dajiang truly escort him? Despite the amicable relationship between their families, Wang Dajiang had often tormented Gao Yuan, deriving amusement from his distress. As anticipated, the following day, upon their encounter, Gao Yuan was met with disdain. What do you want? Wang Dajiang growled as Gao Yuan approached the bicycle. Your mother instructed you to take me to school. Gao Yuan stuttered, his face aflame as his grip on the bike weakened. Do you have any idea of the value of this bicycle? Can you bear the cost of repairs should you damage it? Wang Dajiang derided, gazing down at Gao Yuan with disdain. I caution you, do not overstep your bounds. Moreover, in class, refrain from disclosing that we hail from the same village. I cannot endure such humiliation. With that, Wang Dajiang swiftly pedaled away, leaving Gao Yuan standing there, fists tightly clenched. He had foreseen this outcome. Why had he subjected himself to such degradation? On the inaugural day of classes, Gao Yuan arrived tardily. Fortunately, the instructor, taking into account the commencement of the term, refrained from admonishing him, thus allowing him to evade any repercussions. However, this was not a viable long-term solution. The subsequent day, Gao Yuan rose at dawn, hastily preparing breakfast and packing his lunch, eager to depart for school in a timely manner. This unexpected behavior startled Ma Junlan, who quickly emerged from her slumber, hastily donned her garments, and inquired of her son, Why are you awake so early, well before 6? Gao Yuan found himself at a loss for words, and Ma Junlan promptly continued, Isn't Jiang accompanying you? No. He swiftly refuted the notion, desiring to avoid any discord. Although Wang Dajiang exhibited a certain unruliness, his parents were genuinely virtuous individuals. Gao Yuan aimed to ensure that his association with Wang Dajiang would not cast a shadow upon the adults involved. Furthermore, should this issue be unveiled, it was certain that Wang Xianzhong would unleash his wrath upon Dajiang, and inevitably, that ire would be directed at him as well. Consequently, Gao Yuan found himself compelled to don a facade of cheerfulness, asserting that Dajiang was most eager to accompany him, yet he simply did not wish to impose. Ma Junlan accepted her son's assertions, for Dajiang indeed displayed remarkable prudence in the presence of elders. In that epoch, how could parents ever comprehend the realm that belonged to their offspring? The early morning aspirations were dashed by his mother, and Gao Yuan once again found himself confronting the specter of tardiness. The homeroom teacher intercepted him at the threshold of the classroom, vacillating between scrutinizing Gao Yuan and contemplating his laudable entrance examination results. Ultimately, with a resigned sigh, the teacher gestured him inside with a sense of urgency. The homeroom teacher was a firm believer in the principle of 3 strikes. However, Gao Yuan had been late for an entire week. On the second Monday morning, the teacher leveled an accusatory finger at Gao Yuan, glaring fiercely as he thundered, You, go stand in the corner this instant. Thus, Gao Yuan became the object of derision among his entire class. What was even more exasperating was that Wang Dajiang clandestinely disseminated the moniker Little Fool throughout the classroom, leaving Gao Yuan feeling profoundly humiliated. He yearned to remain unnoticed, to transform into a mere specter within the confines of the classroom. However, the absence of a bicycle rendered his daily tribulations conspicuous. At the same time, he was forced to deceive his mother, pretending to be in the company of Dajiang. His middle school journey was laden with adversity. Moreover, his mother was aware that Dajiang departed at 7:30 each morning, compelling Gao Yuan to conform to this routine. Should he rise earlier, His mother would become acutely suspicious, pondering whether the two boys had quarreled and whether Dajong had ceased his willingness to accompany him. Gao Yuan sought to obfuscate this predicament, wishing to avoid any discord between their families. Classes commenced at 8, thus to evade tardiness. He was compelled to traverse 10 miles within half an hour, running as swiftly as a bicycle. For an adult, this distance might not appear excessively formidable. However, Gao Yuan was merely 11 years of age, delicate in physique, encumbered by a heavy backpack, and maneuvering through a landscape of undulating terrain. On dreary, rainy days, it was nothing short of a death sentence. Yet, he discerned no alternative destiny had bestowed upon him but this narrow avenue. All he could do was race against the clock, striving earnestly to curtail his delay. The homeroom teacher had also acknowledged this predicament, even engaging Gao Yuan in dialogue to ascertain the reasons for his tardiness. Yet, Gao Yuan remained reticent. It was simply too humiliating. He harbored no desire to invoke sympathy or pity from his instructor, for in his view, such compassion was merely a veiled affront. As autumn gracefully transitioned into winter, the days morphed into weeks. 50 minutes, 40 minutes, 35 minutes. After persevering through 4 months of unyielding toil during that icy season, Gao Yuan ultimately succeeded in completing the distance in 30 minutes. He was liberated from the shackles of punishment. As he flowed into the classroom amidst the throng, he became merely another face in the ordinary crowd, perspiring profusely as he settled into his seat, yet his heart overflowed with a profound sense of solace and joy. At long last, he could revel in the simplicity of being an average individual. From that day onward, Gao Yuan seldom arrived tardy. Through sheer determination, diligence, and perseverance, he overcame a considerable hurdle on his educational path. However, one insurmountable challenge persisted: poverty. In the classroom, aside from him, few students brought their own lunches. Most opted for meals in the cafeteria or at the snack street near the school gate, where one could procure a bowl of noodles for a mere yuan, a serving of tofu pudding for 2, or a meal of water-fried buns. Only Gao Yuan brought steamed buns and pickles from home, accompanied by a bottle of chilled boiled water. He even abstained from eating in class, opting instead to conceal himself behind a refuse heap on the playground. In a small grove, where he furtively partook of his meal, glancing around anxiously to avoid detection by a familiar classmate. While these circumstances were tolerable for Gao Yuan, matters grew more intricate concerning the issue of material fees. The tuition had been cobbled together from his mother's sale of old grains, yet now the school demanded additional fees. What more could they possibly sell? The homeroom teacher had been persistently urging him, and now only he and a girl named Song Shui remained without payment. Although the teacher refrained from calling out names, any casual mention in class sent a chill down Gao Yuan's spine. He had only broached the subject of the material fee with his mother once, and from her countenance, he gleaned her distress. She had implored him to wait a little longer, and thus he abstained from pressing the issue. He understood the weight of her burdens, and the family situation was increasingly dire. While postponing for a day or two was bearable, extending it to a week or more presented a different challenge. He could summon the fortitude to endure, yet the delay had now stretched nearly a month, and with final examinations looming, the school required submission a month in advance. The teacher had shown him considerable leniency, but he too had to shoulder some responsibility. He acknowledged the teacher's own struggles. Therefore, upon returning home that day, he resolved to speak to his mother once more. This financial matter could no longer be deferred. Chapter 6. A misunderstanding upon returning home. Gao Yuan beheld his mother diligently attending to the stove, leaving him momentarily at a loss for words. She possessed a keen sense of awareness, undoubtedly. Her thoughts were consumed by the matter of the material fee. Had they the financial means, she would have procured the necessary funds long ago. Suppressing his unease, he meticulously completed his homework, subsequently assisting his mother in serving dinner. He remained silent, biding his time for the perfect moment to introduce the topic. Once they had concluded their meal, he eagerly volunteered to wash the dishes, but his mother unexpectedly called out, "Xiao Yuan, it is not too late to pay the material fee now, is it?" Overcome with excitement, Gao Yuan promptly set down his bowl and exclaimed, "Mother, do we have the money now?" Junlan, with a hint of shyness, delicately extracted a crisp 50 yuan bill from her pocket and placed it into Gao Yuan's hand, urging, "Please hold on to this. Ensure that the material fee is settled by tomorrow." Gao Yuan grasped the substantial, fresh bill, casting a glance towards the grain bin, and inquired, "Mother, did the grain collector arrive today?" Junlan smiled gently, shaking her head as she replied, "I borrowed this from Aunt Jiang. Once we sell the grain, we shall repay her." At that moment, a wave of relief washed over Gao Yuan. The anxiety of returning to school had dissipated. The following dawn was particularly brisk. Clad only in a thin silk quilted jacket and a tattered woolen sweater, Gao Yuan felt a fierce determination ignite within him. He understood that as long as he engaged in physical activity, the biting cold would be vanquished by the warmth of his exertion. Upon arriving at school, his first course of action was to hasten to the office to submit his materials fee to the homeroom teacher. To his dismay, he found the teacher absent, attending a meeting and not expected back until the afternoon. Anxiously, he tucked the money securely away, fearful of misplacing it. Even during class, he found himself unconsciously slipping his hand into his pocket to reassure himself that the money remained safe. As noon approached, a brisk gust of wind stirred outside, accompanied by the delicate descent of snowflakes. Once the classroom emptied, Gao Yuan pondered whether to enjoy his provisions in the snowy playground or to consume them quickly within the classroom. Perhaps I should dine by the classroom window, where I can observe those passing by. If a classmate returns, I can swiftly conceal my meal, he mused. With this thought in mind, he situated himself by the window, arranged his meal on a classmate's desk, and began to savor the steamed bun. Yet, just as he had taken a few bites, Zhang Hui unexpectedly entered through the back door. Startled, Gao Yuan swiftly concealed the bun within his embrace. Zhang Hui cast him a perplexed glance before returning to her seat, where she hastily retrieved her small wallet and exited the classroom in a flurry. That was a near miss. Thankfully, I managed to evade detection. Gao Yuan wiped the perspiration from his brow, and only after Zhang Hui had departed did he extract the bun once more, continuing to devour it. When the afternoon bell tolled, Zhang Hui, having just emerged from the restroom, hurried back into the classroom to find her dear friend, Song Shui. In hushed tones, she conveyed to her, "Song Shui, the homeroom teacher has returned. Weren't you supposed to submit your materials fee? Quickly, make your way to the office." "Oh, I shall go at once," replied the demure Song Shui, promptly rising to rummage through her pockets. Yet, after a thorough search, she found nothing. In a frantic effort, she even pulled her backpack out from the desk to sift through its contents. But the materials fee remained elusive. Tears welled in her eyes as she realized the arduous journey she had undertaken to procure that money from her parents. After days of pleading and wearing them down, they had finally bestowed upon her the funds the previous night, and now it had mysteriously vanished. "Song Shui, what troubles you?" inquired Zhang Hui. Concern etched upon her face. "My materials fee is missing." "Zhang Hui, did you happen to see a pristine 50 yuan bill? Where could I have placed it?" Song Shui, overwhelmed by anxiety, bit her lip as tears welled in her eyes. Zhang Hui endeavored to jog her memory, reminding her that she had placed it in her backpack before transferring it onto her person. "It must be in one of those two locations. Please search again." Song Shui once more rummaged through her pockets and emptied her backpack entirely, yet the money remained elusive. "It's gone. I have searched everywhere. What am I to do?" Her fair cheeks soon bore the marks of her tears. Her distress captured the attention of the entire class, and Gao Yuan, too, turned his gaze toward the commotion, only to meet Zhang Hui's intense stare. In that moment, Zhang Hui, seething with indignation, strode directly toward Gao Yuan, confronting him with an accusatory tone. "Did you steal it? What were you doing sneaking around in front of Song Shui's desk during lunch?" I did not," Gao Yuan protested, utterly innocent. How could such an accusation be leveled against him? "Did not? Do you dare to allow me to search?" Zhang Hui challenged, her hands resting defiantly on her hips as she loomed over Gao Yuan. "What do I have to fear? The money in my pocket is my own research fee." As he spoke, Gao Yuan reached into his trousers, producing a crisp 50 yuan note and placing it upon the table. Zhang Hui's eyes widened in disbelief as she leapt up. "You still assert that you haven't stolen? This is Song Shui's money. I have seen it. It is a pristine 50 yuan note." Gao Yuan furrowed his brow, feigning innocence. Was it not unreasonable for her to claim ownership of the money merely because she had seen it? Fuming, he retorted, "This was given to me by my mother last night. How could it possibly belong to Song Shui? You ought not to bully me in this manner." Song Shui. Lu Bing, Zhang Xiao, come and see if this is indeed Song Shui's research fee. Zhang Hui called out arrogantly to her companions. A few girls gathered around, and upon observing the new bill, they swiftly confirmed its ownership belonged to Song Shui, and they were all willing to testify to that fact. Several young ladies extended their hands towards the money, yet Gao Yuan promptly safeguarded it, grasping it firmly as he declared, "This is my money. I am utilizing it to cover my research expenses." Song Shui, you cannot do this. Reflect carefully. Did you not perhaps misplace the money elsewhere? Perhaps a second look is in order? Still in denial? I shall summon the homeroom teacher and reveal you for the thief that you are. With that, Zhang Hui stormed off to fetch the homeroom teacher. Gao Yuan was utterly confounded. How had these girls so abruptly reversed the situation against him? The homeroom teacher pushed through the throng, her expression grave as she inquired, "What is transpiring here?" Zhang Hui leaped forward, pointing an accusatory finger at Gao Yuan. "Teacher, he has stolen Song Shui's money. He was the sole occupant of the classroom at noon, behaving suspiciously. Upon my return from the restroom to retrieve my wallet, I witnessed Gao Yuan hastily concealing the money within his garments. I did not conceal any money, I assure you," Gao Yuan implored, his lips trembling. In that moment, he felt tears welling in his eyes. The homeroom teacher inhaled deeply and addressed him, "Gao Yuan, if you have indeed taken Song Shui's money, you must return it. One may find themselves in want, yet one must uphold their dignity." Gao Yuan shook his head, tears glistening in his eyes. "I assure you, I did not steal it. This money was bestowed upon me by my mother, borrowed from our neighbor." He extended his hands in a gesture of defense toward the teacher. "Hand it over." Zhang Hui swiftly seized the money, proclaiming, "This money rightfully belongs to Song Shui. We can all attest to that. A pristine 50 yuan note. Song Shui displayed it to us in the classroom this morning." She thrust the money into Song Shui's hands and continued her vehement accusations against Gao Yuan. "Teacher, he is indeed a thief. His family is in dire straits. He is the only student who brings his own lunch and hides in a small grove on the playground to consume his steamed buns. He cannot afford the research fee, so naturally, he resorts to thievery." Chapter 7. The teacher's method. In that moment, Gao Yuan felt utterly defeated. He comprehended the immense effort invested in acquiring that money. His mother, who rarely sought assistance, had humbled herself to borrow from a neighbor for his benefit. If this money were to be taken from him, how could he possibly convey that to her? "Give it to me," Gao Yuan exclaimed, rushing forward to seize it, soon becoming entangled with several girls. The classroom erupted into chaos, prompting the homeroom teacher to intervene. Firmly grasping Gao Yuan by the collar as he declared, "Everyone, settle down. Song Shui, take a close look. Does this money belong to you? I know Gao Yuan well. He is unlikely to resort to theft." Song Shui gazed at the money in her hands, the only discernible difference being that it was new. The money she had lost was fresh, and the cash in Gao Yuan's possession was likewise pristine. Both were 50 yuan notes. Furthermore, Zhang Hui had observed Gao Yuan lingering right in front of his seat. Could it not be her own money? What further incensed Song Shui was the realization that she had consistently excelled in her elementary school years, only to have her position usurped by Gao Yuan in middle school. In several monthly examinations, she fell short by a mere 5 points, relegating her to second place. Additionally, with parents who favored sons over daughters and 2 younger brothers at home, she had to navigate her middle school years with utmost caution, as if traversing a perilous path. Should she fail to secure the top position in the impending final exams, her parents would possess ample grounds to urge her withdrawal. Their household could scarcely afford the education of 3 children unless she, as their daughter, distinguished herself remarkably. The distinction between virtue and vice is often perilously narrow. With finals on the horizon, Song Shui contemplated that if she could seize this opportunity to deliver a decisive blow to Gao Yuan, she might reclaim those 5 points and restore her rightful place at the top, thereby safeguarding her educational future. Thus, she gritted her teeth and proclaimed with steadfast resolve, "Teacher, This money is rightfully mine. Zhang Hui and Liu Bing can attest to the truth. Gao Yuan's head throbbed, and he staggered unsteadily on the verge of collapse. Please, do not do this. Reflect carefully. You must have misplaced it, or perhaps someone has stolen it. Gao Yuan lamented, tears welling in his eyes. His voice a desperate whisper as he turned to Song Shui. The homeroom teacher, eyes flitting anxiously, was in a state of confusion. Gao Yuan, typically one of the top students, known for his quiet demeanor and composure, seemed an unlikely candidate for such an accusation. Though he possessed a motive, given his prolonged delay in settling the materials fee, the teacher hesitated to reach a hasty conclusion. Hand over the money. We shall address this matter later. For now, return to your seats and concentrate on the lesson. The teacher commanded, casting a stern glare. Yet, the money represented a matter of life and death for both Song Shui and Gao Yuan. Who among them would willingly part with it? How could anyone hope to focus on their studies in such dire circumstances? Whose possession was it, truly? Certainly, a resolution was imperative. Gao Yuan found himself at a loss for words, struggling to articulate the predicament to his mother. It was, without a doubt, his hard-earned money. How could they possibly seize it from him? With tears welling in his eyes, he charged forward once more, exclaiming, "You band of thieves! Your oppression is intolerable. Cease this at once." Gao Yuan, Gao Yuan. The homeroom teacher seized his collar and propelled him outside the classroom, admonishing, "Stand here and regain your composure. If you're guilty of theft, there is no escape. If you are innocent, no one shall cast aspersions upon you. Contemplate your actions, and return to class only when you can master your impulses." On that day, Gao Yuan felt an all-encompassing chill enveloping the world around him. Both his body and heart were stripped of warmth. He had already suffered neglect within the classroom, particularly with numerous witnesses rallying behind Song Shui. He was convinced he would never reclaim the lost funds. This was indeed a convoluted legal predicament, devoid of resources for his materials and now falsely accused of theft. How could he possibly pursue his studies? He incessantly consoled himself with the notion that perhaps withdrawing from school was not such a dire option. Having matured, he could assist his mother with her work and manage the household duties. Why endure the injustices of academia? In that frigid winter, the contemplation of leaving school lingered persistently in his thoughts. Let it go, young man. Relinquishing it would spare you from further anguish. The homeroom teacher was equally troubled. All the money appeared indistinguishable, and each individual claimed ownership. How could one uncover the veracity? What further vexed him was the recent assignment from the head of the teaching research group, who had presented him with a formidable issue to resolve, insisting that he articulate the solution process by day's end. After a period of contemplation, he found himself utterly perplexed. Amidst the chaos in the classroom, his thoughts became increasingly tumultuous. As a novice educator, he frequently faced criticism from the director regarding his pedagogical aptitude. Should he fail to resolve this dilemma, his future endeavors would undoubtedly grow more arduous. In his desperation, he resorted to a rather impulsive strategy, inscribing the problem upon the blackboard and proclaiming, "In this lesson, we shall confront this challenge. Whoever is able to solve it shall be rewarded with 50 yuan. The homeroom teacher, Jiang Bin, found himself with no alternative. He placed his faith in Song Shui, the foremost scholar of the class, convinced that she would unveil a solution. Even if her response proved erroneous, he would still regard it as valid. Consequently, 2 50-yuan notes would be secured, alleviating the burden of material fees and allowing him to set aside the convoluted legal matter. Meanwhile, Gao Yuan peered through the window, his gaze falling upon the formidable problem inscribed on the blackboard. It appeared that fate was extending a benevolent hand, leaving him ensnared in a web of indecision at this pivotal juncture. He recalled his mother, who had selflessly relinquished her own opportunities to transform their destiny for his benefit, diligently amassing every last coin for his education. At this moment, how could he possibly entertain the thought of surrender? Amidst the biting northern winds, Gao Yuan ultimately fortified his resolve, snapping a brittle branch and resolutely stepping into the boundless expanse of pristine snow. In that fleeting moment, the heavens transformed into his classroom. The snow became his blackboard, and the branch in his hand emerged as the most exquisite writing instrument imaginable. He inscribed the formidable problem, stifling the tears welling in his eyes, compelling his hands to remain steady against the frigid air. His writing was vigorous, the calculations precise and lucid, the logic flawless. He swiftly crafted several lines. Yet this was a problem that even the homeroom teacher grappled with. Midway through, he found himself at an impasse. It was overwhelmingly challenging. However, no matter the difficulty, could the relentless passage of time and the tribulations of life truly be more formidable? If he could not unravel this mathematical enigma, how could he possibly confront the myriad challenges that life would inevitably present? Gao Yuan closed his eyes, wiping away the tears from his visage as if severing all distractions, allowing him to concentrate wholly. The mathematical formulas he had once mastered surfaced in his mind like scenes from a film, albeit disordered, yearning for reorganization and recombination. Moments later, the branch in his hand began to move once more. The snow-covered ground was adorned with meticulously drawn characters, equations both lengthy and succinct, intricate and simple. In the vast expanse of snow, the diminutive figure of the young boy appeared minuscule against the overwhelming backdrop of his surroundings. Yet, this mere speck in the ocean was fiercely striving to carve out a semblance of dignity and an opportunity for himself, igniting his fate with the flames of determination. Thus, he wielded his pen as a sword, retreating steadily, channeling all his energy to fend off the relentless onslaught of challenges. Ultimately, when there was no further retreat, he inscribed the final answer. It was at this moment that the homeroom teacher rapped on the blackboard. "Has anyone calculated the result?" The young boy, Gao Yuan, cast a glance towards the window and observed several hands elevated in the classroom. "Monsieur Bao, what answer did you obtain?" 4,687, came the response. Upon hearing this, the teacher exhaled a sigh, shaking his head in disappointment, and proceeded to question others, his brow deepening in concern. Ultimately, filled with a flicker of hope, he turned to the second student, Song Shui, and inquired, "What is your result?" Song Shui hesitated, rising with an air of uncertainty. "My answer is 24. The teacher's brow remained furrowed, yet Song Shui's response proved equally erroneous. After a moment of reflection, just as he was on the verge of speaking, Gao Yuan, standing outside the classroom, confidently parted his purple lips and proclaimed, "The answer to this problem is 16. Chapter 8. A letter from afar. This voice, though not resounding, reverberated within the teacher's consciousness like a thunderous explosion. It was 16. He possessed the answer. Yet what confounded him was the methodology by which this conclusion had been reached. He felt compelled to meticulously delineate the calculations to present to the authorities and to enlighten his students. As the teacher's gaze drifted towards the doorway, he was utterly astonished. Behind the young boy, whose cheeks were aglow from the biting cold, sprawled an extensive array of equations adorning the ground. Those monumental symbols stood as unwavering support behind the diminutive figure, a proud armor reflecting his indomitable spirit. The teacher hurried out of the classroom, instantly entranced by the spectacle before him. Not only were the characters exquisitely and meticulously rendered, but the equations flowed with seamless elegance. This problem was not intrinsically challenging. It assessed knowledge previously acquired. The true difficulty resided in the ingenuity of the problem, which ingeniously encompassed all the mathematical formulas learned thus far. Provided one possessed a robust foundation and skillfully combined and applied these formulas, the solution would undoubtedly be apparent. How could such a steadfast child possibly resort to larceny? Thus, for the homeroom teacher, Jiang Bin, the inquiry into the disappearance of Song Shui's money had become trivial. They were all exemplary students worthy of a devoted education. "Let us return to the classroom," the teacher said, placing an arm around Gao Yuan's shoulder and gently guiding him back inside. He then ascended to the podium and proclaimed, "Very well, the matter concerning the material fees has been resolved, and there is no need for further contention." Yet, had the dilemma truly been settled? Although Gao Yuan had maneuvered through the challenge of the material fees, he could not evade the murmurs that trailed behind him. Particularly, the small faction surrounding Song Shui perpetually cast doubts upon him, leaving Gao Yuan feeling profoundly aggrieved. And where, indeed, had that 50 yuan vanished? It was only later, as Song Shui reclined in bed that night, that she unearthed the answer. Within the confines of her garment, a small pocket had torn, allowing a folded banknote to slip through and nestle into the lining. As she set her clothes aside before slumber, her fingers inadvertently brushed against the hem, sensing something amiss. After considerable effort, she unearthed her own 50 yuan note. In that instant, Song Shui was engulfed by panic. Her initial thoughts were steeped in guilt and regret, recalling how they had cornered Gao Yuan earlier that day, leaving him utterly wronged. However, soon she found herself enveloped in confusion. Her sisters had compromised their dignity to aid her in retrieving this money, particularly Zhang Hui, who adamantly accused Gao Yuan of theft, with the others rallying to support her. If she were to elucidate the truth, where would that leave her sister's pride? How could she face them afterward? She could not betray those who had stood steadfastly by her side. Could she? In any case, the material fees for Gao Yuan had already been submitted by the class teacher, resolving the matter at hand. Why then should she inflict further harm upon others? That night, after much restless contemplation, Song Shui ultimately opted for silence. Yet, Gao Yuan felt an oppressive weight upon his heart, akin to a burdensome stone. Although the issue of the material fees had been settled, his reputation still bore the blemish of an unjust accusation. He could scarcely summon the energy to concentrate on his homework, languishing in a stupor at the dining table. It was at that moment that his mother approached him, timidly stating, "Xiao Yuan, I have something to show you. This letter is addressed to you, and I feel it inappropriate to withhold it." It was a letter from the south, signed by Huang Wuwei and addressed to Gao Yuan. "Do you remember Uncle Huang from before? He has composed a letter for you," his mother remarked, firmly placing the correspondence into his hands. Yet, Gao Yuan's senses sharpened at once. Huang Wuwei was the individual who had once endeavored to abduct his mother. After a span of 3 years, what could he desire? Did he still harbor feelings for her? As Gao Yuan unfolded the letter, he exhaled a sigh of relief. The correspondence was indeed addressed to him, and it contained no reference to Huang Guowei's past entanglement with his mother. In the opening lines, Huang Guowei extended a heartfelt apology to Gao Yuan, expressing his earnest hope that Gao Yuan would not harbor any resentment towards him. He reflected sorrowfully on his actions from that fateful night. Following this was a significant passage. "Gao Yuan, I have little to present to you, but recently, many of my acquaintances have taken to collecting banknotes. I stumbled upon a few sets myself, and thought to bestow one upon you as a memento. While it may not be a considerable amount, these notes possess collectible value, all printed in the same year, and each adorned with the final digit of 8. Treasure them well. You never know, they might command a handsome price in the future." Upon reaching this juncture, Gao Yuan's heart quickened, yet he suppressed his exhilaration, patiently continuing to read. "Over the years, I have frequently heard it proclaimed that our nation's economy is undergoing a profound metamorphosis. This transformation is a natural consequence of the state's unwavering dedication to education and the cultivation of talent. Change embodies opportunity. The era of opportunistic speculation is firmly behind us. The future, without a doubt, will be the domain of the educated, the perceptive, and the responsible youth. In my younger days, I was deprived of the chance to pursue higher education. Regrettably, my daughter, your sister, has withdrawn from school due to my shortcomings in her upbringing. Thus, I direct my thoughts towards you, my compassionate and understanding child. I earnestly hope you will pursue your studies with diligence, regardless of the challenges you may face. Remain resolute and persevere. Devoid of paternal guidance and affection, I am genuinely apprehensive that you may stray from your intended path. It is my heartfelt desire that this correspondence serves as a beacon of encouragement and inspiration for you. Place your trust in your uncle. Education is the cornerstone of a promising future. Do not tread the same misguided route as my daughter. Lastly, I remain uncertain as to whether you have found it within yourself to forgive me. Should you have done so, and if you encounter any tribulations in life, I implore you to reach out to me at the address provided." Upon completing this letter, the long-suppressed emotions within Gao Yuan finally surged forth. Uncle Huang's words resonated profoundly within him, yet more significantly, they furnished him with the means to vindicate his own existence. "Mother, did Uncle Huang send a collection of coins? The 50 yuan you previously bestowed upon me must have originated from that set. Am I correct?" Gao Yuan inquired, striving to contain his exhilaration. Oh, little Yuan, do not overthink this matter, Junlan replied, her brow etched with guilt. When your uncle Huang sent the funds, I merely withdrew them to cover your registration fee. Had I informed you beforehand that the money originated from Huang Wei, your obstinate nature might have led you to reject its use. Gao Yuan quickly shook his head, a smile gracing his lips as he inquired, Mother, where is that money? May I see it? I may require it, and I assure you it shall not be squandered. Once I have utilized it, I will return it to you. Noticing her son's absence of anger, Junlan promptly responded, I shall retrieve it for you at once. The packaging is exquisite. Chapter 9. Such as fate, Junlan swiftly returned to her chamber, retrieving the money concealed beneath her bed. Each banknote was ensconced in a slender rectangular plastic sleeve, all linked in an elongated strip. This strip comprised denominations ranging from 1 yuan to 100 yuan. Yet the 50 yuan note was conspicuously missing, having been excised by her with scissors. Remarkably, the last digit of each bill's serial number was 8. If he could merely procure the bill from his instructor and juxtapose it, it would suffice to exonerate him. Furthermore, with the funds dispatched by Uncle Huang, his tuition for the forthcoming semester was assured. That night, Gao Yuan was so enraptured that slumber eluded him, as he envisioned Zhang Hui's malevolent visage as she defamed him. If he could elucidate the truth before the entire class the next day, he would take great pleasure in witnessing the retorts of Zhang Hui and Song Shui. The following day, Gao Yuan hurried to school, only to discover that Song Shui and her cohort had ceased their chatter concerning his purported theft. In fact, they conspicuously circumvented him as they ambled past his desk. He even perceived a fleeting glimpse of trepidation in Zhang Hui's eyes, while Song Shui quivered and averted her gaze as she gathered the assignments. Eventually, the math class with the homeroom teacher commenced. Yet Gao Yuan found himself in a state of hesitation. Should he truly elucidate the situation? If he merely presented the money for comparison, he would no longer endure the stigma of being branded a thief. However, was Song Shui and her companions. They had so fervently defamed him the previous day. If they were to unveil the truth today, the dignity of these young women would be irreparably tarnished. Furthermore, given the nature of gossip, what begins as a mere whisper can rapidly escalate into a sweeping scandal. Would they not become the focal point of pointed conversations behind their backs? Moreover, the incident that transpired yesterday was intrinsically convoluted. Although the small faction led by Song Shui had cast doubts upon themselves, the majority of the class, devoid of substantial evidence, did not recklessly brand themselves as thieves. Particularly with the resolution of the material fees, there was no justification for incurring the burden of paying twice. During that mathematics class, Gao Yuan found himself preoccupied with the homeroom teacher. He hesitated countless times, grappling with the impulse to act, yet ultimately refrained from unzipping his backpack. Let be. Let this moment pass. At last, the school day drew to a close, and Gao Yuan could not muster the courage to escalate the matter. Instead, he consoled himself with the thought that a clear conscience fears no shadow, and others were free to think as they wished. He was also cognizant of Song Shui's familial struggles. The pursuit of education was fraught with challenges, and like him, she had postponed the payment of her material fees, sharing in a common adversity. Considering Song Shui's remarkable academic achievements, it seemed entirely plausible that her financial constraints were genuine, thereby unjustly imposing this burden upon him. Nevertheless, such matters had become inconsequential. All he longed for was for her to refrain from ever mentioning the incident again. Gao Yuan, possessing formidable resolve, managed to quell his own heart's turmoil. The small circle surrounding Song Shui never revisited the topic. Yet, as winter loomed, Gao Yuan's health began to deteriorate. One fateful day, a heavy snowfall compelled many classmates to request lunch deliveries, choosing to dine within the classroom. Embarrassed to unveil his humble steamed bun and pickles, he trudged through the snow to a secluded grove east of the playground to partake in his meager meal. Perhaps it was the biting cold, exacerbated by his insufficient attire, that led to an afternoon of a runny nose and a sore throat. The ominous shadow of a cold was stealthily encroaching upon him. Gao Yuan harbored a profound dread of illness, particularly the prospect of succumbing to a cold. fearing the resurgence of old afflictions that might necessitate a visit to the county hospital, thus straining his family's fragile finances. He was acutely aware of their precarious economic situation. Any additional expenditure would send his mother into a whirlpool of anxiety. She had always been industrious and frugal, yet found herself perpetually stretched thin. What terrified him most was the notion of his mother discovering Huang Guowei's address and seeking his assistance. He feared the day she could no longer bear the weight of their struggles and chose to leave home in search of Huang Guowei. Such a pitiable youth, burdened by a multitude of concerns, that even Emir Cold transformed into an adversary he felt compelled to confront with utmost seriousness. That evening, upon returning home, he prepared a substantial bowl of ginger soup, yet succumbed to fever during the night, trembling and enveloped in a haze of delirium. Summoning every ounce of willpower, he rose from his bed and relentlessly drank hot water, hoping to expel the sweat from his body. He believed that once he perspired, the cold would dissipate. However, despite his efforts until the early hours of dawn, no sweat emerged. Frustrated by his recalcitrant body, he gritted his teeth and rummaged through his closet for old garments, beginning to construct makeshift sandbags. Each sandbag weighed 5 pounds, accumulating a total of 10 additional pounds on his legs. As dawn broke, he eagerly dashed toward school, and by the time he reached the halfway point, he was drenched in sweat, exhaling hot, spicy breaths. What a liberating sensation. Illness, what power do you wield over me? Fate, what dominion do you possess? Do you genuinely think me incapable of exacting retribution? Arriving a full 10 minutes tardy, you shall take your place at the rear and heed the lesson. The homeroom teacher intercepted Gao Yuan in the corridor, reprimanding him until he dared not raise his gaze. Yet, an unexpected joy welled within him. Previously, the teacher would have condemned him to stand outside, but perhaps due to the season's chill, he was allowed the comfort of the classroom's warmth. More significantly, he had exerted himself to the point of perspiration, his hair dampened, and the fever that once plagued him had vanished. He was restored to health. From that day onward, Gao Yuan committed himself to relentless training with a sandbag, fortifying his physique to render himself impervious to illness. Meanwhile, in her own sphere of struggle, classmate Song Shui grappled with her own burdens. The slander directed at Gao Yuan had become a persistent thorn in her heart. She felt a profound sense of guilt and indebtedness. And each time she collected Gao Yuan's work, it felt akin to an act of theft. She longed to clarify the situation with him in private, yet was apprehensive that he might reveal her misdeeds, thereby jeopardizing her friendships. She was consumed by torment and inner conflict, lamenting her hasty judgment and branding him a thief. A month later, Gao Yuan's running speed had notably improved, and he no longer arrived tardy. However, Song Shui felt her academic performance deteriorating, her confidence diminishing. Each glance at Gao Yuan stirred within her a tempest of turmoil and regret, rendering her utterly helpless. As the final examinations loomed, Gao Yuan excelled remarkably, while Song Shui's determination had already waned, concluding her journey in a state of anxiety. On the eve of winter break, the results were unveiled. Song Shui retained her position in second place, yet Gao Yuan had eclipsed her by over 40 points. There was no possibility of redemption, no chance remaining. Song Shui was profoundly cognizant that the moments dedicated to her educational odyssey would eternally be encapsulated at that instant. She lowered her head upon her desk, stifling her cries. Yet tears cascaded like a delicate brook. Her friends, bewildered, encircled her to offer solace. Meanwhile, Wang Dajiang at the rear exclaimed with a smirk, "Weeping for securing second place? If I were to attain third, my father would likely commemorate it with firecrackers resounding throughout the village. The realm of the adept transcends our understanding," Song Jianchao jested, clutching a cultivation novel and adopting an air of sagacity as he crossed his legs. As lunchtime approached, a wave of students surged toward the classroom exit. Yet, Gao Yuan bowed his head slightly, biding his time for others to depart before he could hastily retrieve his bun to satiate his hunger. What troubled him was that Song Shui lingered at the back, seemingly lost in thought. Resolutely, Gao Yuan mused that he could just as well dine beside the refuse heap in the biting wind. However, before he could act, Song Shui approached him with her backpack. "Gao Yuan, Could you escort me out? Gao Yuan was taken aback. Song Shui had never addressed him so directly before. What had spurred this change today? Yet she persevered. Accompany me. There is much I yearn to discuss. If we do not converse now, this opportunity may never arise again. On that luminous afternoon, along the campus pathway, Song Shui took her inaugural courageous steps, undaunted by the prospect of judgment, walking beside a boy. I am genuinely remorseful, even though this apology comes rather late. Gao Yuan, I sincerely apologize. Song Shui flicked her ponytail, wishing to smile, yet her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Gao Yuan comprehended the cause of Song Shui's sorrow, yet he had endured far graver slanders throughout his own journey. In truth, he had not allowed it to burden his heart, particularly given the passage of time. Why do you carry your backpack when school has yet to conclude? Gao Yuan inquired. Perplexed. I have withdrawn. I can no longer pursue my studies, Song Shui replied, turning back with a smile, even as tears streamed down her cheeks. What? Gao Yuan's mind whirled. How could she possibly forsake her education? He found it incomprehensible, for Song Shui had consistently distinguished herself in her studies. Song Shui had anticipated that Gao Yuan would take pleasure in her misfortune. However, to her astonishment, his countenance revealed shock, remorse, and bewilderment. Why? There must be an explanation. Gao Yuan insisted, his fists tightly clenched. He had never betrayed Song Shui concerning that incident, nor had he ever disclosed it to their peers. Could it be related to the cost of materials? No one knows. As long as you keep it to yourself, simply remain. There is no necessity to withdraw due to this. Overcome with emotion, Song Shui began to shed tears. She had not anticipated that this boy had steadfastly defended her all along. Since the day Gao Yuan had been unjustly criticized, he had remained silent, never once addressing the matter again. Song Shui treasured this act of kindness, which only deepened her sorrow. To dispel any misconceptions, she unveiled the true reason for her withdrawal from school. Her family had forbidden her from pursuing her education, following a decline in her academic performance. Her parents had obstructed her path to knowledge. Why? Why did you not disclose this sooner? Gao Yuan implored, gripping Song Shui's shoulders tightly, his heart laden with grief. Tearfully, he confessed, had you revealed this earlier, I would not have strived for the top. How foolish I have been, competing against you. What has come over me? Gao Yuan was engulfed by a deep sense of remorse, acknowledging that his competitive spirit had imperiled Song Shui's academic ambitions. In that time, in such desolate surroundings, the chance to pursue education was exceedingly invaluable. Wait for me. I shall approach the teacher and assert that there has been an error in the grading, so that you may be awarded the certificate for first place. Song Shui. This scheme will surely succeed. The teacher will undoubtedly lend her support. With that, Gao Yuan hurried away, but Song Shui grasped his arm, imploring Gao Yuan. Even if I finish middle school, I shall not be able to attend high school. My family has 2 younger brothers, and they cannot afford to support so many. After a moment's pause, she gazed up through her tears and proclaimed, This is my destiny. No amount of striving will alter it. Chapter 10. Will there be forgiveness? On that midday, when the warm sunlight intertwined with a brisk breeze, 2 youthful spirits stood upon the narrow path leading to the southern gate of the campus. Seemingly powerless against the confines of their era and the fierce competition for familial resources. Some may contend that education is not the sole avenue in life, casting doubt upon the necessity of such emotional depth. Yet, in that era, within a rural landscape bereft of information, what alternatives were available to a girl like Song Shui beyond her scholarly pursuits? Upon her departure from formal education, she was relegated to the role of a familial laborer, aiding her parents in their agricultural endeavors, often exerting herself even more than they did. As a girl, her destiny was to ultimately enter into matrimony. Her parents sought to harness her worth, requiring her to augment the family's prosperity prior to her nuptials. Perhaps at the tender age of 16, or possibly 18, Song Shui was fated to seek a suitor, thus enabling her parents to receive their anticipated gifts a few years sooner. She might even bear a child first, becoming a mother at a youthful age. Upon reaching the legal age, she would then proceed to the Civil Affairs Bureau to procure a marriage certificate and host a celebratory banquet, leading her life in such a manner. In that bygone era, how many young women akin to Song Shui traversed the same path? She embodied the fate of the vast majority of school dropouts, symbolizing the most ordinary of destinies. This was not merely an isolated incident, but rather the lamentation of an entire generation. It was Song Shui who first stifled her tears. Taking a deep breath, she smiled and remarked, concerning the material fee, I have already elucidated the matter to the head teacher. You may conduct yourself with a clear conscience henceforth. Gao Yuan pressed his lips together. The issue of the material fee had long since lost its relevance. In that moment, he realized that Song Shui was in fact more pitiable than himself. Here, take this back. Song Shui retrieved a crisp 50 yuan note from her pocket and added, I discovered it within the lining of my garments. I knew it was not yours. Gao Yuan, am I truly despicable? Proceed to reprimand me, or strike me if it pleases you. It would bring me solace. Gao Yuan, however, could not acquiesce. He gazed at the note, lingering in contemplation for considerable duration before responding. Retain it. This sum justly belongs to you. Regarding the material fee, the head teacher has graciously covered it on your behalf. Yet, the reward for the questions you answered correctly is bestowed by our head teacher. Song Shui obstinately persisted, attempting to press the money into Gao Yuan's palm. Let it serve as a cherished memento. Our head teacher is a commendable educator. His intention in bestowing this money was to inspire us to engage in diligent study, rather than to offer us material compensation. Therefore, this money carries far more significance in your possession than in mine. It is the most treasured keepsake. If it were within my power, I would likely expend it, Gao Yuan remarked with a smile. Once, they had engaged in a fierce confrontation over this very sum, harboring mutual disdain. Now, it had metamorphosed into a symbol of camaraderie. Perhaps life is indeed a tapestry woven with intriguing narratives. Let us proceed to the head teacher's dormitory. He requested that I inform you to meet him there at noon. Unable to resist Gao Yuan's insistence, Song Shui ultimately accepted the money, forcing a gracious smile before turning to depart. In the distance, she mounted her bicycle and gradually faded from view at the school gate. Growing up necessitates a succession of farewells. Yet at that moment, Gao Yuan had not comprehended this most fundamental truth of existence. Even upon arriving at the head teacher's dormitory, he remained ensnared in the melancholy of separation. Within the confines of the modest dormitory, there was a bed, an aged desk, and 2 stools. Upon the table lay a bag of steamed buns, 2 bowls of tofu pudding, a bottle of white liquor, and 2 cups. Before Gao Yuan could articulate a word, the teacher poured the liquor into the cups. Can one partake in white liquor? Join me in a toast. As he spoke, the headmaster nudged the bottle towards Gao Yuan. Sir, students should refrain from consuming alcohol, Gao Yuan replied, feeling a sense of discomfort. How could the principled headmaster suddenly take the lead in flouting the rules? Enough of this banter. If you are a man, simply drink. The headmaster raised his cup and swallowed its contents in a single gulp. Gao Yuan felt conflicted. Since the teacher had made the suggestion, he found himself eager to indulge until inebriation took hold. Raising his teacup, the fiery liquid coursed down his throat, settling into his stomach. His face turned a deep crimson, reminiscent of someone who had bitten into 10 fiery chilies, yet he was enveloped in an indescribable euphoria. Go ahead and eat. It is all for you, the homeroom teacher declared, placing his teacup down and gesturing towards the steaming water-fried buns. Sir, Song Shui has withdrawn. Gao Yuan, emboldened by the effects of alcohol, sought a means to express his frustrations, convinced that he had, in some measure, driven Song Shui away. I'm aware, the homeroom teacher responded, lowering his gaze. Why not extend your assistance to her? I could relinquish my top position in her favor. All that is required is for you to elucidate the situation to the class, allowing her to offer her parents a satisfactory explanation. The homeroom teacher inclined his head backward, inhaling deeply, and remarked, Song Shui's journey through middle school has been laden with trials. Each day, post-school, her parents offer scant support. She faces a multitude of chores awaiting her at home and bears the responsibility of caring for her younger brother, leaving her with little time to devote to her studies. Otherwise, her academic performance might not significantly differ from yours. With each utterance, Gao Yuan felt a growing discomfort. He believed his own challenges were considerable. Yet he had not comprehended that some bore even greater burdens. At the very least, when he undertook his homework at home, even his naive father refrained from interrupting him. Although chores existed, his mother never imposed upon him as long as he remained focused on his studies. Furthermore, Song Shui has wronged you. Attending school must weigh heavily on her heart. She yearns to step forward and elucidate matters, but lacks the fortitude. Perhaps withdrawing from school is the most prudent course for both of you. Now let us dine. The golden, crispy water-fried buns that once tantalized Gao Yuan's palate now held no allure for him. Under the influence of his teacher, he begrudgingly consumed 5 of them along with a bowl of tofu pudding. What pained the homeroom teacher was his inability to salvage a promising student. After graduation, she could have pursued greater opportunities, yet she resolutely returned to her hometown, teaching at her alma mater, a school in the township. In his youth, he had been perceived as slow-witted and underestimated by his educators. Yet through sheer determination, he had persevered in his studies, gaining admission to high school and, subsequently, to a teacher training college. His life motto was, "There are no poor students, only inadequate teachers." Not everyone could secure a place in esteemed institutions, but with diligence, ordinary individuals could attend university and aspire for brighter futures. Thus, he had never relinquished hope for any student, treating even the likes of Wang Dajiang and Song Jianchao with equal care and attention. He was confident in his ability to elevate the entire class's performance, ensuring that all could progress to high school. Yet to his dismay, what ultimately defeated him was not academic performance, but the familial values each student carried with them. Xiao Yuan, you are a true man. Following that incident, you refrained from uttering a single word. Those endowed with a generous spirit are destined to accomplish remarkable feats, Jiang Bin declared, giving Gao Yuan a hearty pat on the shoulder. Chapter 11. Under scrutiny as winter gracefully transitioned into spring and the seasons shifted, time accelerated, and Gao Yuan found himself in the second year of middle school. Due to the county's initiative in promoting innovative crop varieties, their corn and wheat produced an extraordinary harvest, with yields surging by 50% compared to previous years. Chapter 12. Entangled in serious matters, every detail had been scrupulously orchestrated, yet events transpired with unforeseen abruptness. Before Gao Yuan could comprehend the situation, Wang Dajiang surged forward, seizing the grip from Gao Yuan's grasp. Chapter 13. Dajiang's confidence beyond the highlands. Wang Dajiang employed a myriad of persuasive strategies, wielding threats of class honor and enticing with the allure of chocolate, a sumptuous indulgence, to convene the class monitor, deputy monitor, and members of the discipline committee. Chapter 14. The utmost insult, the dual afflictions of physical fatigue and mental strain rendered Dajiang incapable of maintaining his rhythm, to the point where he could scarcely stabilize his running form. Naturally, the Highland bore witness to this predicament. He grasped the origins of the marathon. Chapter 15. An even more shocking matter, the tribulations of existence had imparted upon the Highland countless sleepless nights, myriad challenges, and profound emotional scars. Just as the racket incident was on the cusp of resolution, misfortune struck his mother once more. Chapter 16. Silent transformation. Some individuals may seem unremarkable in their daily lives. Yet when their true talents emerge, one becomes acutely aware of their own status as a mere fool. On that day, in relation to Dajiang. Chapter 17. The spark of hope. How could a seasoned principal with over 3 decades of educational experience fail to recognize the pivotal role of education in shaping a student's fate? The actions of Jiang Bin that year imparted a profound lesson. Chapter 18. Dajiang's apology. 2 former adversaries found themselves invigorated at this juncture, united by shared purpose. Yet, the Highland maintained his composure, swiftly adopting a stern countenance and unfriendly tone, inquiring, Wang Dajiang, what brings you to my abode? Chapter 19. Progress through pain. Upon arriving in the county town, the Highland was already inundated. The thoroughfares seemed expansive, the edifices soared skyward, and the throngs were plentiful. The enticing fragrance of cuisine drifted from the entrance of the station, while contemporary melodies resonated from the neighboring multimedia emporium. Chapter 20. Rise up and continue to strive. The enchanting Hudong Industrial Park, embellished with vivid blooms and the harmonious chirping of birds, should have been a tranquil and picturesque haven. Yet, owing to the marathon event, it had transformed into a cacophonous spectacle, imbued with a palpable tension. The Highlander gritted his teeth. Chapter 21. Struggling against fate amidst the grueling race. A familiar sensation seemed to resurface. The spring zephyr serenaded his ears, the air cascaded past his nostrils, and the foliage on either side lauded his endeavors. In that instant, time appeared to decelerate. Everyone. Chapter 22. The radiance of humanity, had he been misled once more? Gazing at the departing bus, the Highland felt an overwhelming surge of determination to pursue it. He yearned to inquire of Dajiang whether he had indeed missed the arrival announcement or if he had intentionally chosen to forsake him. Chapter 23. Remorse. The vast city was shrouded in a multitude of stars. Ahead, illuminated by the glow of streetlights, the Highland discerned the sign for Jianglin City Orthopedic Hospital through the windshield of the vehicle before him. The place he had longed for had finally arrived, igniting within him a fervent excitement and anticipation. Chapter 24. Everything is all right. It was only then that Ma Junlan observed her son's feet ensconced in bandages, his jeans tattered, and his pallor reminiscent of a destitute child. Chapter 25. The greatness of the ordinary Wang Xianzhong's resonant voice reverberated throughout the hospital room, causing Dajiang to tremble, and he collapsed to his knees in terror. Speak up. Had your aunt not encountered this incident, how much longer would you have intended to conceal this secret? Wang Xianzhong inquired, his brow furrowed. Chapter 26. Reclaiming dignity as the family had voiced their sentiments, Gao Yuan could not possibly show them any disrespect on this joyous occasion. He resolved to partake in the feast with an open heart and without hesitation. De Jiang eagerly ushered Gao Yuan inside, yet Gao Yuan. Chapter 27. The crisis of Class 3. After a momentary silence, the ambience of the banquet was suddenly set ablaze. Everyone is aware that Gao Yuan is an introverted child, sometimes as reticent as a delicate maiden. Yet, who could have foreseen that in such? Chapter 28. The struggle between good and evil in the afternoon office. Research Director Wu Shuahai brewed a robust cup of tea, reclining in his chair as he leisurely polished his glasses. According to intelligence reports, Song Jianchao from Class 3 had become increasingly active, reportedly. Chapter 29. The outbreak of conflict. Research Director Wu Shuahai once more seized the opportunity during the self-study period in class. He felt a sense of unease, as following several recent assessments, Jiang Bin's Class 3 was nearly on par with his own class's mathematics scores, even suggesting that. Chapter 30. Jianchao's resentment. Indeed, Jianchao was the first to leave school, dashing away with fervor. He did not wish to reveal tears of vulnerability before his peers, nor did he desire anyone to witness that he, Jianchao, possessed a gentler side. Wang Dajiang, we are unequivocally. Chapter 31. Resolving the crisis. Director Wu Shuahai hardly slept a wink that night, fearing that Jianchao and Dajiang might genuinely confront one another outside of school. He even resorted to smoking, increasingly feeling unworthy of his role as a teacher, in pursuit of advancement and a raise. Chapter 32. The cold reality. In the morning, the conference room in the office building was filled with subject leaders from various grades. In such an impressive setting, Jiang Bin, the principal speaker of the meeting, felt a surge of excitement, his hands trembling uncontrollably. This was his opportunity to promote his teaching. Chapter 33. A benevolent lie. In truth, Jiang Bin was merely 24 at that time, still an inexperienced young man. He had yet to comprehend the myriad complexities of the world and society. His understanding was naive, and he even. Chapter 34. The failure of reform. In contrast, Jiang Bin was genuinely prepared to embark on a grand endeavor. The fervor of his convictions blazed with such intensity that sleep eluded him at night, while the tumultuous blood coursing through his veins imbued him with an inexhaustible vitality. After a relentless period. Chapter 35. Embracing release. Jiang Bin succumbed to illness. Upon awakening the following day, he felt disoriented and feeble, grappling to rise from his bed. The unremitting nights, filled with insomnia, anxiety, and self-doubt, had nearly exhausted his physical being. The harshness of reality brought Chapter 36. A resurgence of passion, the old principal's words sent a tremor through Jiangbin. He had anticipated that following his hospitalization, the students would revolt, incite chaos, and dismantle the very regulations he had once enforced. He recognized that the students had endured oppression for far too long. Yet, Chapter 37. The double-edged sword? In an instant, Class 3 erupted with exhilaration. Jianxiao was indeed willing to support the homeroom teacher in locating a venue for supplementary classes. He was the least accomplished student in the class, infamous throughout Class 3 and the entire school as a mischief maker. De Jiang was the first to rise. Chapter 38. Jianxiao's betrayal. No one can predict what will unfold next, yet the sound of students departing the school in the evening approaches. Jiangbin entered the classroom, initiating the organization of students to neatly arrange their chairs, and then directed the hygiene monitor to gather individuals to fetch brooms and dustpans. Chapter 39. The most correct path. The atmosphere in the factory was laden with tension, both parties filled with ire and agitation. At that moment, a voice resonated from behind the factory. What a magnificent spectacle! It has been many years since anyone dared to create a disturbance on this side of E Street. Chapter 40. Great things. The crowd's sentiments were stirred by Jiangbin, yet many remained enveloped in deep perplexity. Another student inquired, "Teacher, what about someone like me?" Chapter 41. Worthy of people's trust in his pedagogy, Jiangbin appeared to have uncovered a novel exploratory methodology. Following his discourse with Gao Yuan, he continued to seek academic strategies from other class representatives and top students, meticulously chronicling the insights he acquired. Upon returning home in the evening. Chapter 42. Jiangbin's crisis. On the eve of the Educational Committee's inspection, the aged principal urgently summoned Jiangbin, who was in the midst of a lesson, to his office. With the door firmly shut and the windows drawn, the elderly principal seated himself at his desk, his frail hands trembling ever so slightly. Chapter 43. Wu Shuahai's report on Wednesday. In preparation for the impending inspection by higher authorities, Xinxingno, one middle school, initiated an extensive cleansing of the campus early in the day, with teachers examining windows for dust as if wielding magnifying glasses. Meanwhile, Wu Shuahai clutched an envelope, his heart laden with trepidation. Chapter 44. The outcome. The playground in the evening, illuminated by the glow of the setting sun, shimmered as though sprinkled with gold. Vice Principal Liu He and Wu Shuahai ambled in silence, hands clasped behind their backs, neither daring to break the quietude. Wu Shuahai understood that this silence signified impending crisis. Chapter 45. Competing for business. As time progressed, Gaowang Village faced yet another bitter winter. However, this winter proved particularly lively, even giving rise to sensational news. After enduring over 6 months of recuperation. Chapter 46. Chunni's scheme. The model of factory village integration began to take form amidst the first snowfall of winter. Ma Xiaolei, the director of Huanglong Net Factory, assembled a temporary team. Chapter 47. Dividing the spoils. Once a consensus is reached among the unscrupulous, the subsequent step invariably entails the redistribution of profits. Ma Xiaolei opened his briefcase, unfurling the contract across the table, his demeanor solemn as he declared, "For each finished product, I demand a 1/5 share of the profits." Chapter 48. Establishing the accounting station. Upon his return to the net factory, Ma Xiaolei was greeted with resounding accolades from Director Sun Taohai. Sun Taohai had set a minimum expectation of 9%, yet Ma Xiaolei astonishingly secured the contract in merely half a day, much to his elation. Chapter 49. Chunni's sudden wealth. As the year drew to a close, villagers eagerly waved their thick bundles of receipts, forming an extensive queue before Zhang Chunni's accounting station. On average, their individual earnings amounted to a commendable sum of approximately 20 to 30 yuan per day. Chapter 50. A fortunate escape. On the eve of the Lunar New Year, the entrance to Wang Xianzhong's abode was undoubtedly the most vibrant locale. Each year, he would acquire a breathtaking assortment of fireworks from far-off lands, illuminating the night sky of Gao Wang Village with a magnificent spectacle. Chapter 51. The price of deception. As winter yields to spring, Gao Wang Village embarks on its bustling farming season. Presenting a quandary, Should the villagers devote their efforts to tilling the soil or to the crafting of fishing nets? In such a desolate village, opportunities for financial gain are few and far between. The endeavor of net processing, which demands minimal investment and effort, presents itself as a potentially lucrative venture. Nevertheless, it is a laborious task that offers scant rewards. Consequently, during the farming season, this pursuit becomes akin to a chicken rib, neither particularly advantageous nor easily abandoned. The most bewildering transformation for the villagers, however, is the metamorphosis of Zhang Chun and I. Chapter 52. The siege the door was forcibly breached by the fishermen of Huanglong Island. And fortunately, the town leaders intervened. Otherwise, the fishermen's wrath could not have been assuaged merely by the act of kicking down doors. Sun Taohai, seasoned by his transition from state-owned enterprises to private ventures, discerned that the crux of this incident lay with his own faction. Therefore, he discarded all pretense, revealing a visage replete with anguish as he articulated the fishermen's grievances. Leaders, fellow villagers, I was away on a business trip for a month, and have only just returned yesterday. I have only just become aware of the events that have unfolded. I am presently in correspondence with Director Ma regarding how we may address this matter for our fishermen. I find myself equally astonished and indignant. Yet, it is ultimately the fate of my Huanglong Island that hangs in the balance. Chapter 53. A grave misfortune. Zhang Chun and I of Gao Wang village appeared entirely unaware of the disaster she had inadvertently invited upon herself. She sequestered herself in the main chamber, standing before the mirror, admiring the Western-style dress she had procured from the county town just a few days prior. She longed for the swift arrival of summer, for her fair skin and elegant figure were her pride. In her days of destitution, she could not afford fine garments, and no matter her attire, she bore the semblance of a peasant. However, circumstances had shifted dramatically. She had suddenly ascended to affluence and emerged as the focal point of attention within the village, taking the helm of Gao Wang village's processing industry. Countless villagers now directed their gaze toward her. Chapter 54. The struggle for interests. As events unfolded, Chun and I found herself enveloped in panic. Fortunately, Ma Xiaolei exhibited a measure of fortitude. He hurriedly reassured Chun and I, inquiring, "Why are you so flustered? Zhang, bear in mind that the villagers' products are subpar. They are to blame, and it is they who ought to feel anxious and accountable. As the leader of Gao Wang village, you must demonstrate unwavering resolve. Indeed, why should I be troubled? They have skimped on quality. I must resolutely denounce and penalize them." Chun and I clenched her fists, relentlessly spurring herself onward. "So, what are we waiting for? Let us swiftly convene everyone for a meeting. This issue cannot be postponed." Chapter 55. Chun and I cease in stark contrast. Ma Xiaolei was profoundly disillusioned with Zhang, Chun and I. Her sole concern appeared to be monetary gain. Even when faced with dire consequences, she obstinately clung to her self-interests. No term could more aptly describe her than foolish. After the assembly had dispersed, Ma Xiaolei, shaking off his sleeves, intended to depart. But Chun and I quickly stepped in his way, stating, "Director Ma, there are still matters we must address." Ma Xiaolei could scarcely contain his urgency to extricate himself from this quagmire of complications, his demeanor frigid as he proclaimed, "What further discourse is necessary? You have orchestrated this chaos, yet I am expected to rectify it. I have no more words for you." "Very well, then you may take your leave." Chapter 56. Substitution. At that moment, Chun Ni's heart raced and her hands quivered. She recognized that her actions had been misguided. Yet her limited viewpoint rendered her utterly susceptible to the seductive pull of affluence. "Yanzi, you previously noted that while the Qianhai brand is costly, it enjoys remarkable sales, correct?" Chun and I inquired tentatively. "Indeed, the Qianhai brand generates substantial profits. We in retail are eager to advocate it to our customers," Yanzi responded, bemused. "Sister Chun and I, what has piqued your curiosity? I recall you inquired about this last year." Chun and I inhaled deeply and responded, "Yanzi I." Chapter 57. Joyful news. Upon encountering his formidable aunt, Ma Xiaolei could not suppress a smile, reminiscing about the day she engaged in a remarkable verbal duel. Holding the fish trap aloft, he He extolled, "This craftsmanship is among the finest I have encountered, second only to Ma Junlun." He then turned to Chun and stating, "Accountant Zhang, let's adopt this standard for Manny. As long as the quality improves, we can negotiate the price later." At these words, Chun and exhaled a long sigh of relief, allowing the perspiration from her brow to finally surface. Chapter 58. The final lesson. Undoubtedly, both Gao Yuan and De Jiang had submitted applications to County No. 1 Middle School. Their homeroom teacher, Jiang Bin, was diligently engaged, darting about as he sought to furnish the most insightful guidance for students' college applications based on previous admission results from various high schools. However, Jiang Bin failed to notice that Jian Chao and several class representatives had seemingly vanished for a time, only returning in a flurry just before noon. With the holidays approaching and applications nearly complete, Jiang Bin's phase of life appeared to reach a satisfactory conclusion. Everything surpassed his expectations. And even more gratifying was the proactive involvement of music teacher Zhang Tian. Chapter 59. Crisis erupts. Gao Yuan demonstrated remarkable agility. He had already mastered the art of cycling along the route from Gaowang Village to Hutu Bridge. At this moment, 3 youths set off from town. De Jiang rode Jian Chao's bike, carrying him along. Gao Yuan wobbled behind them. De Jiang continued to boast loudly, while Jian Chao playfully bantered with him, and Gao Yuan followed, chuckling as if he were indulging in a comedic performance. The 20-mile journey passed in a blur as they reached their destination. It was Gao Yuan's first glimpse of the sea. Although Gaowang Village was merely 30 miles from the coast, the sight was nonetheless breathtaking. Chapter 60. The truth of the incident. Sun Tao Hai's cousin, Sun Tao Jiang, acting as the temporary head of the factory, promptly stepped forward to stabilize the situation. "What do you intend to do?" "Address the pressing matters at hand. Should this turmoil persist, do not hold me accountable for my perceived lack of empathy," he exclaimed grimly at the fishermen assembled before him. "Where is that rogue Sun Tao Hai? Let him emerge. I vow I shall flay his skin." Huang Ming's eyes sparkled with indignation, as the substantial financial setback was utterly intolerable for him. This year, in a bid to amplify production, he had invested all his savings in collaboration with his brother. Sun Tao Jiang raised his hand to pacify the other's wrath. Chapter 61. A startled bird. The chain reaction ignited by the avalanche swiftly permeated Chun Ni's household. Having just reconciled her accounts with Yan Zi the previous night, she was now meticulously stowing a substantial stack of savings books within the cotton of her pillow. At that moment, the door was forcefully flung open, and her 2 sons called out for Uncle Sun from the yard. Chun and rushed outside, only to be confronted by the ghastly countenance of Ma Xiaolei. "Director Ma, what has transpired? Is there a quality concern with yesterday's products?" Chun and inquired with trepidation. "Accountant Zhang, you are truly remarkable. Your prowess surpasses even that of the Monkey King." Chapter 62. Justice will prevail upon their arrival in the county town. Chun and Ma Xiaolei promptly made their way to the bank. Ma Xiaolei, ever the astute observer, opted to remain in the vehicle at the bank's entrance. Who could ascertain whether the authorities might leverage the bank's records to dispatch agents for an unexpected apprehension? Given the turmoil within the factory, it was merely a matter of time before the police were alerted. As the overseer of Gao Wang Zhuang, Sun Tao Jiang would undoubtedly be compelled to report his absence. "Accountant Zhang, your immediate task is to transfer all the funds to this card. By doing so, you will safeguard our assets from being frozen, thereby facilitating our escape." Chapter 63. A fiery Ind Chun and meandered restlessly through the night, as if ensnared in a dream, with the echoes of past triumphs swirling in her consciousness. Yet dreams must inevitably yield to reality. When the torrents of truth surge forth, all illusions shall be obliterated. At what moment did I embark on this irrevocable journey? Initially, I simply desired to witness the Gao family endure less hardship than I had. Earning a modest salary as an accountant and leading the processing team at Gao Wang Zhuang sufficed for my aspirations. Why then must I continue to plunge deeper into this abyss? Chun and I wrestled with this perplexing dilemma. Chapter 64. An unforeseen calamity. The repercussions of this incident did not conclude there. It began to cast a shadow over Gao Yuan's already beleaguered family. Ma Junlan wept throughout the night, her sobs gentle yet resonant, and Gao Yuan, resting in the adjacent room, perceived them distinctly. His mother's lamentations pierced his tender heart like daggers. Gao Yuan grappled with the incomprehensible reality of why, after his mother had toiled tirelessly to elevate them from the precipice of destitution, fate had once again cruelly plunged them into an abyss. The blood coursing through the young boy's veins simmered with indignation. He harbored a profound aversion to poverty. Chapter 65. The youth's predicament during the initial days of school. A flurry of activity enveloped the campus. Students were allocated dormitories, acquainted themselves with the surroundings, and procured meal cards, all while striving to forge new connections. In Class 1, De Jiang flourished, establishing numerous new friendships. The plateau remained serene, and whenever he found a fleeting moment, he immersed himself in the wisdom of new tomes. Quietly perched by the classroom window, in the distance lay the vibrant city of Huanglong County. Occasionally, he would drift into contemplation, pondering the mysteries that lay beyond the county and what the world beyond Linjiang City might hold. Yet, after indulging in such distant reveries, he felt compelled to return to the present and reflect upon his own situation. Chapter 66. Same name, same surname. The reunion of the two brothers inevitably stirred up considerable excitement within the dormitory. The other residents refrained from uttering a word, for Dajiang possessed a remarkable sturdiness, radiating an aura of authority even in repose, tinged with an unsettling intensity. Only after Dajiang's departure did the others feel liberated to engage in their customary routines, washing up and conversing freely. Dormitory resident Xiaoba approached, taking a seat on Gayuan's bed, his gaze irresistibly drawn to the assortment of snacks sent by Dajiang. If one were to assert that Gao Yuan had acquired a new friend, it would undoubtedly be Xiaoba, who had befriended him merely to elude. Chapter 67. Conflict on the court. Dajiang had seamlessly woven himself into the social tapestry, emerging as a notable figure within just a month. His genial disposition endeared him to his teammates on the sports team. Yet, a lingering regret gnawed at him. He had yet to address the matter entrusted to him by his mother. The dilemma lay in Gao Yuan's elusiveness, slipping away too swiftly for Dajiang to extend an invitation. Moreover, his teammates frequently urged him to join their basketball games after class. To decline repeatedly would appear discourteous. Thus, Dajiang resolved to prioritize his own concerns for the time being. If Gao Yuan truly faced Chapter 68, a resounding blow at times, one must concede that the louder the voice, the greater the summons to action. Otherwise, how could valiant generals on ancient battlefields rally their troops to charge forth? Dajiang's voice, resonant with an enchanting timbre, epitomized prestige, security, and the formidable strength of unity within the hearts of the populace. Not only his companions, but seemingly the entire corridor was privy to his words. Residents from neighboring dormitories emerged, joining the throng surrounding Dajiang. In summary, the crowd had burgeoned beyond enumeration, completely occupying the staircase. Dajiang pulling. Chapter 69. The Great Plateau. Zhang Yong found it difficult to be dissuaded. Since the inception of his academic journey, this little despot had never encountered such a substantial setback. If only the Great Plateau were present, with his affiliations to numerous influential figures, he could undoubtedly compel that scoundrel from earlier to kneel and plead for mercy. Alas, the Great Plateau was a day student, not residing on campus. By dawn tomorrow, I must enlist the Great Plateau to restore my honor. Otherwise, I, Zhang Yong, shall find no refuge within this class. As he simmered with frustration, he reclined on his bed, tending to a throbbing bump on his head that thwarted his attempts at slumber. Chapter 70. The contradictions of youth on that fateful day. Zhang Yong returned to the classroom, his visage akin to that of a swollen pig, tears brimming in his eyes. Meanwhile, Gao Yuan took the initiative to address the Great Plateau. Why do you extend your assistance to me? Zhang Yong is your friend. Under ordinary circumstances, this is not how it should be. Gao Yuan summoned his courage to inquire. Utterly bewildered, the Gao Yuan turned about, displaying no contempt for Gao Yuan's unassuming demeanor. Instead, he opened his arms and enveloped Gao Yuan's slender shoulders, remarking, Whoever told you that Zhang Yong is my friend? I share a similar disdain for him. He incessantly resorts to vulgarity and is devoid of any decorum. Numerous times, I have contemplated distancing myself from him, yet his relentless nature proves to be overwhelming. Were this a bygone era, De Jiang would have eagerly approached, draping an arm around Gao Yuan's shoulders, gesturing towards the stalls before the cafeteria, and generously indulging in a plethora of items. However, now he hesitates. Ever since embarking on his high school journey, Gao Yuan has never taken the initiative to visit him in class or in the dormitory. De Jiang could not suppress his speculation. He surmised that Gao Yuan regarded him as merely an athlete and felt a sense of embarrassment in his presence. Consequently, a tide of anger surged within De Jiang. Is being a student in the elite class truly so extraordinary? Who do you believe you are to look down upon others? Were it not for my mother's insistence on my taking good care of you, I would not bother to ingratiate myself with you so often. De Jiang found himself momentarily bewildered. I fail to comprehend. I have consistently shown you unwavering kindness, treating you as a brother, and yet you assert that I lack understanding? A torrent of rage surged within him. He raised his foot and vehemently struck a nearby tree trunk, causing leaves to tumble down like his unjust tears. Yet Gao Yuan countered. One who receives should express gratitude. De Jiang, you perceive yourself as a favored individual. During the monthly examinations, numerous peers bestowed upon you clandestine notes. A source of pride for you. Within the confines of the dormitory, you indulged in novels, skillfully evading the scrutiny of your teacher by tearing the books into fragments and concealing them discreetly, firmly believing that even if discovered, their presence would go unnoticed. As autumn deepened, Gaowang village had succumbed to a somber stillness. Leaves had descended, blanketing the pathways. The desolation mirrored the expressions of the villagers. This year, grain prices had plummeted, seemingly draining the farmers' zeal for labor. Moreover, having savored the sweetness of prosperity from fishing net processing, the stark contrast to their current plight was disheartening. Presently, villagers continued to converse, yearn for, and gaze wistfully towards the transport vehicles of Huanglong Net Factory, hoping they would once again grace their village. Under Lin Qingmei's encouragement, Junlan felt compelled to act without delay. She swiftly gathered the grass and transported it to the roadside cart, then hurried to bring the sheep back home. Cognizant of Qingmei's delicate disposition and her aversion to the odor of sheep, Junlan observed that since her family commenced sheep rearing, Qingmei's visits had notably diminished. Consequently, Junlan prioritized tending to the sheep before preparing a basin of warm water. After securing the door, she employed a damp cloth to cleanse herself thoroughly, applying a touch of snowflake cream to her face and hands. Ultimately, she donned a fresh outfit and hastened out, making her way towards De Jiang's abode. Elder sister Lin Qinglian orchestrated an early gathering of her colleagues, arriving at Gaowang village. This infusion of energy momentarily revitalized the once tranquil hamlet. Women congregated on the streets, while the elderly huddled together, murmuring about the relative of Wang Xianzhong, who feasted on state provisions and operated a government vehicle. Upon encountering this assembly, Ma Junlan initially felt a wave of apprehension. She had never been in the presence of so many officials before. Trailing closely behind Qingmei, she absorbed their articulate discussions, feeling like an outsider, an unwarranted addition to the gathering. She even contemplated fleeing, convinced that she did not belong in such an esteemed company. Chapter 76. The retreating drum. During the brief respite of 2 days, Gao Yuan and Da Jiang were preoccupied with various tasks. Meanwhile, Junlan toiled in the fields, overseeing the labors alongside technician Liang, while Qingmei remained at home, preparing a substantial pot of nourishment to sustain their endeavors. Lacking the experience necessary for catering to a large group, Qingmei felt flustered and uncertain about her next steps. Fortunately, Gao Yuan, maintaining his composure, proposed, "Auntie, why not procure the meat and vegetables while I take charge of chopping and cooking? Da Jiang can oversee the boiling of water and the washing of dishes. Does this arrangement suit you?" With his words, Lin Qingmei experienced a sudden clarity in her thoughts, though a fleeting shadow of concern crossed her visage. Chapter 77. Declining grades. Though concealed, when the plastic film covering the cesspool was lifted, Liang Wendong could not restrain himself and rushed away, hastily removing his mask to retch uncontrollably for an extended period. This abhorrent manure was indeed his own creation. During his university days, he specialized in organic fertilizers, and under the guidance of his mentor, he developed this substance and authored a distinguished thesis on the subject. Upon returning to his hometown, he had also implemented it on a small scale at the Bureau's experimental station, yielding commendable results. However, the previous manure, while fetid, had been produced in limited quantities. Furthermore, the experimental station lacked an appropriate facility for such an undertaking. Chapter 78. Junlin's gains. Gao Yuan harbored a profound aversion to attending English classes, as a majority of his peers in the advanced group had already attained mastery over proper phonetics. Consequently, the instructor seldom allocated ample time to instructing on word pronunciations, typically leading a few readings before hastily progressing to subsequent topics. This situation rendered him in a state of distress, as he perceived himself to be inherently disadvantaged in the subject. His endeavors in phonetic pronunciations and rote memorization enabled him to comprehend words. However, whenever the teacher commenced a lecture, Gao Yuan felt as though he were deciphering an alien script. Frequently, he grasped his English textbook tightly, lamenting his diligent efforts while contending with an escalating sense of confusion. Chapter 79. Hope in life. Qing Mei was equally elated. She rushed into the courtyard, employing a water ladle to shatter the ice atop the water barrel, drawing forth water to cleanse the cucumbers. Junlan anxiously clasped her hands, fervently anticipating the outcome. As Qing Mei took a hearty bite, the sound of a crisp crunch echoed. The cucumber was astonishingly fresh. With each chew, the delicate fragrance of the cucumber enveloped her palate, imbued with a subtle sweetness. It was vastly superior to the wilted cucumbers found in the county town. Fresh, crisp, and of considerable size, it felt remarkably substantial in her hand. "Sister, how does it taste? Is it delightful?" Chapter 80. A role model for women. Junlan was aware of Director Lin's impending visit today. However, she had not foreseen the arrival of such a multitude of dignitaries. Overwhelmed with embarrassment, she found herself half concealing behind a support pillar, discreetly rubbing the dirt from her hands against it. The attire she donned was utterly inappropriate. Her trousers were the school uniform from her junior high days in the plateau, while her top was an antiquated polyester Zhongshan suit that had once belonged to her husband many years ago. Reluctant to wear her more refined garments while engaged in her duties, she now felt flustered as an unexpected throng of officials encroached upon her space, leaving Junlan in a state of disarray. Meanwhile, Director Lin, leading a team, was busily conducting inspections as he made his way towards Junlan. Chapter 81. The storm approaches. The news went unnoticed, as Officer Song was absorbed in capturing photographs of the cucumbers on the table, while Qing Mei engaged in light-hearted conversation with her elder sister. Junlan, lost in contemplation, pondered where and at what price the cucumbers should be sold. Meanwhile, others relished cucumbers dipped in sauce, offering enthusiastic gestures of approval. "Director Lin, the cucumbers are nearing harvest. Where shall we sell them?" At last, Junlan summoned the courage to ask this pressing question. Director Lin, momentarily swept away by her excitement, nearly overlooked the matter. Turning to Junlan, she replied, "There is a wholesale vegetable market in Zhongsuan. Should our yield increase in the future, you may consider selling them there." Chapter 82. The Great Failure. The tempest, accompanied by relentless downpours, surged forth with even greater ferocity. Ma Junlan was loath to relinquish his efforts, and technician Liang Wending was equally unwilling to forsake his diligent labor. He had painstakingly guided the construction of the greenhouse, surmounting myriad challenges, and had witnessed the blossoming and fruition of his endeavors. Now, just when hope seemed within grasp, calamity struck. The fervent passion and unyielding spirit within him urged him to defy Director Lin's commands, as he bellowed to the team. "There are ropes upon the grass mat and stones encircling the greenhouse. Everyone, swiftly bind the ropes to the stones." Chapter 83. The choice of the river in the eyes of the plateau. The character of the class monitor was undeniably commendable. Despite hailing from an affluent and influential background, He never resorted to bullying the vulnerable or displayed any semblance of arrogance. On the contrary, he engaged with his classmates with fairness and kindness. Thus, the benevolent Plateau genuinely sought to offer a reminder to assist the class monitor in enhancing his academic performance. Nevertheless, this did not lessen Plateau's astonishment. If others were here that the English teacher was providing supplementary lessons, who could remain unperturbed? Surely, one would question the rationale. Why should he receive tutoring while I do not? Hence, Plateau inquisitively inquired, the English teacher is offering me extra lessons. Do you not feel a sense of injustice? Chapter 84. The contest for first place in truth, although the tempest had not wrought devastation in other locales. Gao Wangzhuang found itself in a state of turmoil. The tiles from Dajiang's roof had been stripped away, and Qingmei busied herself in search of someone to effect repairs. The Shipen at Plateau's abode had vanished without a trace. In the village, the second grandmother met with tragedy as she was overturned while navigating a slope on her tricycle, a misfortune brought about by the hurricane, leading to her untimely demise. With her funeral, coincidentally, taking place today, the second grandmother was the spouse of Zhang Fuchen and the aunt of Zhang Chuni. Not only was she kin to Plateau's family, but they also shared a cordial relationship. Years prior, when Plateau's mother sustained a back injury and the grain dealer shirked responsibility, it was the second grandmother who was the first to step forward, confronting the grain dealer with unwavering resolve. Chapter 85. The path of selection, our cherished Dajiang has finally awaited the arrival of the provincial club examiner after enduring an arduous period of trials. It must be noted that as a freshman in high school, anyone with even a modicum of self-awareness would typically shy away from such a spectacle. However, Dajiang has never been burdened by such self-consciousness. He boldly disregards the notion of being a newcomer and steps forward with audacity. As someone who has never partaken in a formal competition, Dajiang feels a flutter of nervousness. After all, he had missed the City Marathon League during his middle school years, narrowly circumventing Jianglin No. 1 High School. Now that the opportunity has once again arisen, he is resolutely determined not to let it slip through his fingers. Chapter 86. Junlin's learning experience. The following morning, Ma Junlan diligently organized her home and prepared herself before setting out to rendezvous with Qingmei, where they embarked on a scooter together. Women like Junlan, hailing from rural backgrounds, seldom possess the opportunity to explore beyond their confines. Even a mere journey to the nearby town of Zhongsuan, a distance of 30 li, is perceived by her as a momentous occasion, an adventure in the tapestry of life. The gentle spring breeze playfully tousled her hair, while the warm sunlight enveloped the earth, with lush wheat seedlings emerging and the air infused with a delicate scent of damp soil. As Junlan passed by her ancestral village, she felt no inclination to venture inside. Ever since. Chapter 87. Junlan showcases her skills. Junlan not only conducted meticulous research on the construction of shelters, but she also took the initiative to request a visit to Lu Jianya's greenhouse. Lu Jianya found it impossible to decline, as this task had been assigned by the county. However, as the visit progressed, a sense of apprehension began to envelop him. He had underestimated this unassuming woman, who appeared to possess an extraordinary depth of insight. In reality, Junlan did not possess any mystical abilities. She simply had prior experience in cultivation. She compared her former planting techniques with those currently employed, silently absorbing the beneficial practices while eagerly inquiring about the unfamiliar methods. Although Director Lu remained somewhat elusive in his explanations, he endeavored to provide clarity. Chapter 88. Spraying pesticides. Lu's spouse was well aware of her husband's foul temper. Ever since Junlan had claimed the title of planting expert, he had been ailing in spirit, losing his appetite for both food and tea. Only a few sips of warm wine could momentarily elevate his mood. Lu's spouse felt no anger after a lifetime of disputes. Neither had emerged victorious. Now that they were older, they lacked the energy to quarrel over trivial matters. She smiled and said, "Come home for dinner. I've warmed the wine, and the buns are filled with your favorite radish." Due to the county's demands, Lu Jianya had skipped breakfast in a fit of rage and now felt genuinely famished. Moreover, the morning spent with Junlan and Qingmei had further exacerbated his discomfort. Chapter 89. stealing techniques at that moment. Lu Jianya was preparing to attend a village committee meeting. But just as he stepped outside, villagers who had been awaiting him obstructed his path in the alley like hunters. Director Lu, last week you mentioned you would find a solution. Have you contemplated anything yet? The seedlings within the greenhouse are perishing in alarming numbers. Surely you possess some counsel. I am on the verge of attending the village committee meeting to contemplate potential solutions. Lu Jianya responded, gripping his pipe tightly. He had successfully eluded the villagers for 2 days and even ventured to the county office, only to return with nothing to show for it. The County Agricultural Bureau had informed him that Liang Wendong, the individual responsible for technology, had been reassigned, and there were currently no specific remedies available. Chapter 90. The Zhongzuan crisis. Owing to Lu Laoban's indifference toward conforming to the masses, she would have undoubtedly been repulsed by her husband's remarks, had she been present. Nevertheless, Lu Jianya remained undeterred, skillfully fabricating falsehoods and employing vacuous rhetoric that left the villagers momentarily stunned. Director, everyone is occupied in the fields. Please, do enlighten us directly regarding the pesticides necessary to combat the root rot issue. One villager impatiently interjected. You, my young comrade, must elevate your ideological consciousness. This is a triumphant assembly, a passionate gathering in which the villagers unite in solidarity. Chapter 91. Unexpected gains in Lu Jianya's contemplation. The intricate machinations that could encircle the globe thrice returned to their origins, reminiscent of the time when Ma Junlan graced the greenhouse with her presence. Had he approached Junlan with an open heart, he would have unearthed her sincere and earnest disposition, simplifying the intricate and embodying profound virtues, even as sharp as spear. Upon piercing the water, would dissipate its force into the ethereal, only to succumb to corrosion and rust over time. Furthermore, was the title of planting expert conferred without merit? Junlan's attainment of such an accolade undoubtedly arose from her own exceptional abilities. Lu Jianya inhaled deeply, raising his gaze. Chapter 92. The arrival of butterflies in the resplendent autumn of July. Our cherished Gao Wangzhuang embarked on a new journey. Following the holiday, Gao Yuan found himself immersed in the fields alongside his mother, diligently weeding, tilling, and transporting materials for the greenhouse. De Jiang had initially planned to lend a helping hand, yet he had enrolled in a specialized basketball training program in the city. Under Gao Yuan's persistent encouragement, he arrived at his aunt's residence 2 days in advance, eagerly anticipating the training. This revival stirred a sense of concern within Ma Junlan. As the era advanced rapidly, urban real estate flourished. Wang Wu, in his capacity as the leader of the rural construction team. Chapter 93. The beauty of labor thus commenced the vigorous construction of the greenhouse. The individuals before us were all skilled artisans, deftly wielding their tools. They began by measuring with precision, marking with delicate string, and ultimately outlining the contours of the greenhouse with white lime powder. Everything unfolded in a systematic and methodical manner. Even the diligent Junlan found herself on the sidelines. Excluded from the laboring throng, she stood apart with a notebook, perpetually absorbing and recording knowledge. Whenever Lu Jianya had a moment to spare, he would hasten over to personally guide Junlan, imparting wisdom on every facet of the endeavor. Chapter 94. Overcoming calamities. Education for rural children is deeply rooted in the virtues of the land and the toil of labor, with Gao Yuan profoundly shaped by this agrarian culture. As long as the spirit remains unquenchable, it shall persist. The more one encounters adversity, the greater the fortitude to confront it. We have cultivated our resilience within the very soil, bracing ourselves for the inequities that lie ahead. Gao Yuan, embodying an indomitable spirit, grapples with reality, resisting with unwavering tenacity. Perhaps I may not vanquish you, but I can endure until despair engulfs you. The golden autumn undoubtedly heralded an abundance of hope for Gao Yuan's family. Chapter 95. The olive branch of the high plateau. From Gao Yuan's perspective, this news bears little weight. He harbors an unshakable belief in his capability to gain entry into a prestigious university, a conviction that is nearly incontrovertible. However, he is suddenly beset by concerns for De Jiang. The latter, in his fervent pursuit of a professional basketball career, has forsaken his studies and allowed his athletic prowess to wane. Should he fail to secure a professional position, he would find himself unable to reapply, potentially resulting in dire consequences. Class monitor, is this news accurate? Gao Yuan inquired earnestly. It should be correct. In the neighboring cities. That evening, Gao Yuan paid a visit to De Jiang's dormitory. To his astonishment, De Jiang, who typically avoided reading, was now reclining on his bed, absorbed in a book about basketball. De Jiang, I need to speak with you. Let's take a walk outside, Gao Yuan proposed at the threshold. Sure thing, De Jiang replied, springing up with enthusiasm. Seizing a snack from the cupboard before donning his winter coat and oversized slippers, he then casually draped his arm over Gao Yuan's shoulder as they hurried outside. The campus on that winter night twinkled beneath a blanket of stars, particularly resplendent after the recent tempest. Finally, Ma Junlin's greenhouse bore a generous bounty. On the inaugural day of harvesting, nearly 800 pounds were gathered. County officials arrived, and even Liang Wendong, who had been temporarily assigned to the city, took a day off to extend his heartfelt congratulations to Junlan. County leaders offered their assistance during the harvest, while reporters from various television stations and newspapers meticulously documented the occasion. The spectacle was so magnificent that Junlan found herself utterly engulfed in excitement, rendering her unable to work. Supermarket patrons busily weighed the produce outside the greenhouse, while Qing Mei meticulously chronicled the prices for each basket of cucumbers. Once all was accounted for, this solitary harvest of cucumbers, time flowed gently, and everything appeared astonishingly serene. High school students seemed wholly engrossed in their studies, seemingly oblivious to the external world. Yet, this tranquil ambience was ultimately disturbed. As the second semester of the sophomore year neared its conclusion, MP3 players emerged as the latest craze, and unexpectedly, the trendsetter was not the affluent Gao Yuan, but the class's enchanting beauty, He Yu. This young woman had consistently captured Gao Yuan's discreet admiration, not only for her physical allure, grace, and academic excellence, but also because, despite his charisma, he found himself at odds with her. In that moment, he was momentarily taken aback. It seemed as if two realms converged, unveiling an anomaly amidst the ostentation of their high school existence. To peruse a tome on agriculture within such a lavish milieu would undoubtedly capture headlines. Similarly, Gao Yuan would find himself the target of mockery among many. Continue reading. There is more within, Gao Yuan uttered through clenched teeth, his countenance shadowed. I shall not. Indeed, you shall not accept it, He Yu retorted, compressing her lips and casting her gaze downward. It is essential that you do. The plateau remains haunted by the moment of departure, that bewildered expression indelibly inscribed in its memory. Nor is the plateau naive. Upon regaining its composure, it swiftly recalled the past, reflecting upon the uncertainties shared with the majestic river. He must have once crossed paths. He vividly recalls the inaugural day the Great Plateau transferred to his school, taking the initiative to engage in conversation, only to be met with a piercing glare from He Yu. Furthermore, the Great Plateau has remarked that they inhabit the same neighborhood, and he possesses insight into He Yu's history. As these threads entwine, it transcends mere coincidence. It seems that every utterance from the Great Plateau was meticulously crafted,